I don't look at it too far out, but I do want to pay attention to what's happening now and what might happen next. But I'm not looking 8 moves down the road. Never did.
Welcome, everybody, to the Warrior Podcast. Today I have someone who has become a dear friend of mine. He's 78 years old. He's a retired manufacturing manager, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. I like to consider him a modern-day philosopher and truth seeker. He's gone deep on a lot of things like I have. We're going to cover some of that stuff, too. A very interesting life story as well. So please help me welcome my dear friend, Jimmy Deans.
Hi, how are you? I want to add to that list.
Go ahead. Throw it out there.
I'm also a fiance.
A fiance.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get to that part of the story too.
Okay.
Awesome. Boy, you just saved your butt right there, didn't you?
I had to add that.
Awesome. Jimmy, so we talked a little bit before. I met you through Valerie at Caroline Lakes. You're a ping pong aficionado. You've kicked my ass quite regularly, which you're making me a lot better.
Yeah.
So we've had some really deep discussions,
Yes,
and I've learned about some of your history, your life history,
Sure.
and your childhood's very interesting. So if we could start there, I would love that.
I had an interesting childhood. I was the fifth of 6 children, and I was probably the most energetic. And so I was I got into a lot of little lightweight trouble in the house, pulling my sister's hair and stuff like that. And I have a sister that's 18 months older than me. I used to pick fights with her, and I lost them all. And I still did that anyway, and it was a love fest. But one of the interesting stories early on was that I was so busy getting in a little lightweight trouble that when we went on trips or went to church or something like that, I had to sit in the front seat between my parents, because that way there'd be less stuff going on in the back.
Yeah, you had the MPs on either side of you.
That's right, and it led to a relationship with my father that I remember to this day very, very clearly. You know, one of his first cars that I remember was a 1951 Kaiser with a stick shift on the column.
Is that a 3 on the tree, or is it a 3-speed?
Yes, it was a 3-speed.
Yeah, they call it 3 on the tree.
Yeah, okay. So I didn't know that. But at any rate, so at the age of probably 5 or 6, I said, you know, Dad, I can do that. And he's like, do what? I said, the thing that you're doing with your hand on that stick. And he says, oh, boy, you can't do that. He called me boy, you know. And I said, yes, I can. So he let me try. And I ended up shifting the gears almost every time we went somewhere. He would clutch, he would do the steering wheel and the brakes and stuff like that, and I did all the gears. I can even put it in reverse when we were parking and stuff like that, you know.
And you weren't big enough to reach the pedals, right?
Oh, no, I was 6 years
Yeah,
old.
I got you.
At best, 5, 6 years old, you know. So that was one of my very early memories. And then my dad used to go fishing. He worked 2 or 3 jobs until he finally got his business as a barber. But he was busy a lot, and he would get a chance to get a break, and he would come home and he tell my mother, he said, baby, I'm going fishing on Friday. And she says, not unless you take that one. She was pointing at me, you know. So I went fishing with him every time, and that meant it was less burden on her because she had 5 other kids to take care of. I had a younger brother that was 3 years younger than me. So at the time that I started going to fishing, let's say I was probably also about 4 or 5 years old. And this went on until I was at least 10 or 12, somewhere in there. I went fishing all the time.
Where'd you guys go?
Mostly Wisconsin and places like that. You know, not very far trips. Using car trips for a couple of hours somewhere.
Are you fishing from a boat or from the shoreline?
From a boat.
Okay, I'm a fisherman, so we're going to take a little side street here. So are you bobber fishing with live bait? Are you casting lures? How are you fishing?
It was usually 2 or 3 men, or 2 or 3 men and myself. That was the ones that went fishing. And they would have 4 or 5 poles in the water that each pole had a couple of baits on it.
Okay.
All right. So however that was. So I never became a fisherman per se. I was just on the trip. I didn't particularly like fishing. I didn't particularly like fish. I didn't particularly like eating fish, but I liked the adventure.
Do you like fishing now or no?
No, the fishing that I've done that I had the most fun, I arranged from with some folks that I worked with. We went on a fishing trip at Lake Michigan. We hired a boat and went out there and at 6 o'clock in the morning and started drinking beer early, and it was a wonderful day. And all we had to do was reel them in. And the skipper and his first mate would take them off of the hook and put them in the cooler and fillet them when we got to the shore when the day was over with and stuff like that. So that was the most fun, really, I ever had fishing, was that, because I never really did the casting and the reeling and the stuff with my dad. It was all, just being with the guys and eating the little Vienna sausages with the crackers.
That's a good experience for a young boy, though, even if you don't like it.
One of the other things that I did on the fishing trip that was absolutely amazing. One of the guys, they call him Brother Shine. He was one of the church members, and he had a motorboat. So we went fishing. When we went fishing with him, we would use his motorboat. And at the age of probably 10 years old, they let me drive the motorboat. So I was so short, I had to sit on the seat, on my rear end, on the top of the seat, so I can do the thing and steer it. And we were cranking along, and I don't know, it felt like 100 miles an hour. It's probably 20 or 30 miles an hour, and the boat is bouncing in the water, and it was we went all over the lake. They just let me go wherever I wanted to go. And they said, go to the right some, and they were telling me stuff like that. That was a thrill, and it also led to me, my dad, we went on vacation, and the car full of my brothers and sisters in the back, and they could care less about what was going on in the front. And we were on our way to the church campground in West Middlesex, Pennsylvania. And my dad he just pulled over to the side of the road and said, "Oh, okay, boy, you drive." I'm like, "What?" He said, I know you can drive, so just go ahead and drive." I was 12.
Wow.
But I was a kind of a bigger boy at 12. I wasn't a little short guy, And so I was big enough to where my legs could touch the gas and the brake and stuff like that. And I drove for probably 15, 20 miles at 80 miles an hour in the 1957 Chrysler Saratoga.
Nice.
And that was a joy also. And my brothers and sisters probably never even noticed or cared.
Was that a shifter on the tree as well?
No. They had an automatic transmission with the push buttons.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I remember.
1957 Chrysler Saratoga.
Did you have to push the shift, or
no,
you just push the button to be in drive?
It was automatic. So
I gotcha.
Yes.
Cool. And before we move forward in the story, your mom's got 6 kids to feed. What is she making for you guys?
We would have chicken on Sunday, 1 chicken, and I would get half of the wing. We had beans and rice and cornbread at least a couple of days a week. They grew vegetables from somewhere. So we had greens and string beans and peas, and I really wasn't a vegetable eating kind of a guy as a kid. We had oatmeal, which I hated, almost every day. Then we sort of morphed into grits and malto meal and stuff like that. We have cornflakes on Sunday. We didn't have a lot of money, but it never felt like we were poor or broke or anything like that.
There's not a lot of grilled steaks on your menu though, growing up, right?
I never had steak until I met my wife, and she was my girlfriend, and she was taking cooking in school. And she says, I can cook. She said, I'm cooking for my dad all the time because my mother can't cook good. And I'm like, well, let's go to the store. And then when we went to the store, that's when I got my first steak, and I brought it and she cooked it for me.
Hey, everybody, I wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors. My dear friend Andy Thompson is the owner and operator of Talon Studios. Talon Studios makes custom knives. This is one of the first knives he made it for me. It's extremely sharp. Everything is made by hand. The handles, the grips, everything. They're beautiful, durable knives. We like to say knives for life. Whether you're a collector or you want knives for utility and function, he even makes the casings for the knives by hand too. Andy works with his son AJ. They are super fine craftsmen, and every knife they put everything, all their heart and soul into their knives. So that's Talon Studios. I will put a link in the description of each of the podcasts, and you'll see their information at the end. Wow.
So I never had a steak while I was
Wow. That's high school?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
We're so spoiled, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
All right, so back to the story. So where do you want to pick it up? You were 6 years old. You drove the first stick shift,
So,
and
so that was those kind of the highlights with my dad.
didn't he have you hang out at the barbershop with him too?
Oh yeah, well, almost everywhere he went that I could go, I did go. He was a painter, so he decorated houses. He painted houses. And he would take me for that. When he tuned up his car, I always was there with him for that. And I asked a lot of questions, and he answered all of them absolutely thoroughly. And he never really lectured me about anything or gave me cautions or stuff like that. He was a sort of a silent guy with me, except for answering my questions. And I had a bunch of them, so. One of the things I learned about him is that I think I adopted his fearlessness because he would try things out. He had 2 or 3 jobs that I recall when I was young. Sometime around maybe I was 10 or 11 or 12 years old, he finally had the resources to purchase a barbershop. But before that, he must have gotten his barber license. I didn't really know anything about that. That was just a job he had that I never went to. But once he got his barbershop, it happened to be about 2 or 3 blocks away from the upper grade grammar school that I went to for 7th and 8th grade. So when school was out, my mother would say, walk to the barbershop and stay there and ride home with Dad. And he would close the barbershop around 7 or 8 o'clock, and I would come home with him, and then we'd have dinner, and everybody else was through eating and stuff like that. So while at the barbershop, it didn't take me long to say, can I shine shoes? Or someone says, why don't you teach them how to shine shoes? And my dad said, okay. And we built a shoe shine stand, and we even built a smaller shoe shine stand where I could shine a person's shoes while they were getting a haircut, and so I always earned money. And even before I was a shoe shine boy, I was with my gang of 15 in the alley where I grew up in Englewood. We would go down the alley on the way to the corner store, and there was this dog, and he was a little Cocker Spaniel. He was a pretty little dog, but he was really vicious. And there was a cyclone fence that he was on the inside of, and he would be trying to chew up the fence to get through it, to get to us, to chew us up, And he was just a wild and sort of angry little dog. And so one day I happened to have been going that way by myself, and he was cutting up like he always does. His name was Tiger. And I stooped down and said, come here, boy, calm down. And his his little tail started wagging, and he came to the fence. He stopped barking and stuff, and I started petting his nose and stuff like that. And the owner, the lady, Miss Jones, she said, "You're the first kid he's ever liked. Would you like to walk him?" And I'm like, what do you mean walk him? She said, "Well, I got a leash. You can take him for a walk." She said, "Because I can't get around. And I said, "Oh, sure." She said, "And I'll pay you $0.25 a day. Walk him every day, and I'll give you $0.25 a day." So I was like 6 or 7 years old, and I started making money. A quarter went a long ways back in the early 50s. We would go to the store. Me and my buddies would go to the store. I could buy 75 pieces of candy.
Right. You could buy a whole bag of candy for $0.25.
For $0.25.
And you were like the king, right?
I was the king. I wasn't even the oldest in our group, but I was really the leader, even though there was a couple of guys in there that were maybe a year and a half older than me. Of the 10 or 12 guys that.
Okay, so I want to ask you this. I want to stay in the childhood right here in the neighborhood. So you're from Englewood, which is kind of the southeast side of the city.
Yes.
I was from the west side of the city.
Yes.
Very mixed neighborhood where I was.
Okay.
We had every culture.
Yes.
I would say almost equal: Mexican, Puerto Rican, black, whites, whatever. Mm-hmm. What was the breakdown of your neighborhood?
When I was born on the west side, on 14th and Troop, and we lived in the projects, in the row houses. And I remember quite a lot of my childhood there. My earliest memories, I had to go back and tell you the story because it's kind of funny.
Yeah.
My earliest memory was my brother being born. Okay.
Your little brother, yeah.
Yeah, so he's like almost 3 years younger than me. So I was not quite 3 years old. He's born in January. My third birthday was in February. All right, so we all slept. It was 5 of us at the time. We all slept in one room in bunk beds. And I remember my mother coming in and waking us up. She said, "Wake up, everybody, and meet your little brother." And I'm like, "What? What's a brother? I was the star of the show. I knew this. I was very conscious of the fact that life revolved around me. I was the baby. All right. My mother catered to me. My brothers and sisters catered to me. I was the star. I actually thought they were actors. They were hiding in the room and waiting for their cue to come back in to entertain me.
Yeah. And
then all of a sudden, this guy shows up, and I didn't even know she was pregnant. You know what I mean? She didn't talk to me about what I'm round in the front because I got a baby in my belly, and he's going to come out, and he's going to. No, they didn't have no conversations with me like that. So I had no idea he was coming. So that was a rude awakening. So from that moment, for several years, I really didn't like him that much, because he stole my thunder.
Yeah, and that's understandable, actually.
And when I was 5 years old, right before my 5th birthday, I got a wagon for Christmas. It was a red Flyer wagon. Mm-hmm. And soon after that, I don't know, I think it was probably still winter. But nice out. My mother said, "Jimmy, take your brother for a ride in the wagon." I'm like, "That's my wagon. I'm not taking him up." She says, "Take him for a ride in the wagon." I'm like, "Okay." So she put our little coats on, and I don't think he was walking at the time, but he was like maybe a year old or soon to be a year old. Okay, because his birthday's in January too. So I said, "This is my chance," So we went in the wagon, and back in Englewood in the early 50s, you could go anywhere. Children could go anywhere, and it was not a concern or an issue if they weren't frightened or seemed to be lost. I used to go on the bus when I was 6 or 7 years old by myself and stuff like that. So I'm like, I'm getting rid of him, and I'm gonna sacrifice my wagon too. So the only route I knew to go, and I was gonna try to go a long way away and then leave them both, the wagon and him. So I'm like 5 years old. I got this thing figured out, So the only route I knew was the route that we took when we walked to church on Wednesday night. So it was like about almost a half a mile away from the house. So I'm going down 61st Street. I get to Racine, which is a busy street, and I turn left and go down a couple of houses, and I leave him on the sidewalk in the wagon, and I'm heading home. Now, I hadn't thought this through. What are you going to say? And if they ask you, where's your brother? Or I didn't think that through. I was happy that I got rid of him finally, And so I'm on my way home, and I'm smiling, skipping along, sacrifice my wagon, And my mother's running down the street toward me. She said, Jimmy, you left your brother. And I'm like, well, what? I played the nut roll, She said, you left your brother in the wagon in front of Sister Galloway's house. And I'm like, oh. We weren't far away from Sister Galloway's house because that was on Racine, And sure enough, the lady was holding my brother in her arms because she saw him out there. She knew who he was because we go to church all the time. And she called my mother and said, Savance, your baby's in front of my house in a wagon. He's in my arms right now. But she said, oh, my gosh. She said, Jimmy must have forgot him, So I never got in trouble for that. I played the nut roll. I was like, what? I did what? And I got away.
Maybe they give you a free pass not to take him for walks with the wagon anymore.
They never asked me to do that again, But I told my brother, and this was the sort of the kids' family inside joke. My parents never really knew that I knew what I was doing. They never got that word. But my sisters used to threaten me with telling the truth on this, But it never happened, And so another thing about my childhood that was interesting is that my mother didn't lecture me much either, even though I was I used to get in trouble for not doing my chores and stuff like that. But I was a really good student, and I was smart in school, so that was never an issue. And I never got in any trouble with any authorities or stuff like that, So my sisters drove my mother crazy because they were always crazy in love with some guy.
How many sisters? 4?
Three.
Three sisters and then 3 boys.
And yes. I got assigned to my oldest sister first, and she's let's say 16 years old. So I'm 10, and she's like, Mom, I want to go see my boyfriend or something like that. And so my mother finally relented and said, well, you can go, but you got to take Jimmy with you. So I'm going with her, So we go to 59th and, Racine to the bar at 7, 8 o'clock at night. She goes into the bar. Now, she's a teenager, but she goes into the bar, and I'm sitting on the stoop outside for a couple of hours waiting for her to come out, And so we get out. And it's dark. It's like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. And she said, ooh. She said, I'm so glad Mama let me go. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to have to tell her everything. She said, no, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to tell her that we're at a bar and you're in there with grown men. She said, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, what's in it for me? She said, well, what do you want? I said, well, I want $1. And then I want you to empty the garbage for a week. I want you to do my garbage chores for a week. And she says, okay, we got a deal. So every time I got the goods on her, I would bribe her and get something in return. And this went on. We had a good working relationship like that,
They're early management skills right there.
And so this went on until she got pregnant and got married at the age of 18. So then I got assigned to Mary Louise, my
number 2 daughter, right?
Number 2 daughter. She would go to Arnold LeBranch's house, and I would be sitting up in his living room watching TV while they're in the back somewhere doing
Yeah,
something, you know. Sure enough, she come out all happy and everything. I said, I'm going to have to tell Mama everything, you know.
Extortion again.
Extortion again. And I pulled a deal with her. And she paid up, and I wasn't heavy-handed with it because it had to be something for everybody. You know what I mean? Everybody had to be happy with the deal. You know, she got pregnant and got married at the age of 18.
So they both had 18, right?
Yes, and so then I got assigned to my sister, who's 18 months older than me. So at this point, I'm 13 and she's 15.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and she just started high school, and you know, so I'm a little bit older, you know, and we're no longer fighting because I'm also bigger than her. And once she realized she couldn't whip me, you know, she became my best friend, you know. So sure enough, she had this boyfriend, Paul Bobbitt, who she ended up marrying at the time, and they would hang out, and I said, I'm gonna have to tell Mama this stuff. This is what you guys are doing are just outrageous, you know. And she said, well, you can't tell them, you can't, you know, what do you want? She said, I know you want to extort me. What do you want? I said, I want to get my first French kiss from one of your girlfriends.
Wow.
And she says, that's insane. I said, it's not insane, and that's what I want, and that's the deal. Take it or leave it. I'm telling Mama, or she said, well, you have a particular friend of mine in mind. I said, yes, Brenda Deal. She said, why her? I said, don't worry about why her. I said, I want to. She said, well, do you like her or not? I said, not really, but she's cute. And I got to get over this hump so I can, you know.
And you've never done that before, right?
No. Okay. And sure enough, she arranged it, and I got my first French kiss from Brenda Deal, and it was unimpressive. You know?
I'm surprised.
Yeah, it wasn't a great grand thing that I thought it was going to be, but I'm like, oh, okay, so it is what it is, you know. That's my relationship with my sisters as we were growing up.
That's good. I want to backtrack because I asked you what was the ethnic breakdown of the neighborhood.
Okay, the ethnic breakdown. When we moved in there, it was. I don't know if you heard of the phrase redlining or something like that.
I'm a realtor, so we were taught about that.
So when we moved in to 61st and Bishop, I would say the neighborhood, that particular block, was probably 95% white, and within a year it was 95% black. It changed really quick. So the house we bought was a bungalow that was modified. They had an apartment upstairs. Okay, you know, they take the sides and that kind of thing. So the people who lived upstairs were white folks when we bought the house, and they were nice.
They paid you rent then, right?
They paid rent to my dad, and they were nice, but they were gone within 3 or 4 months. And so that's the neighborhood that I grew up in.
So it mostly black then after a certain time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
After a year or so.
All right. So I had a group of kids, and I'm 16 years younger. So the world is a little bit different. So I had a real diverse group.
Yes.
And so, but I had my buddies. And when you live in like a busy part of the city, you have a different set of how we go out and play and screw around. So what did you guys do with you and your crew when you were a boy?
Early on, when we first moved there, the alley was gravel. And I'd say within a year or so, they paved it. And so that was where we played, mostly in the paved alley. We played baseball, football. That's pretty much what we did in the alley.
Did the houses have garages by the alley or no?
Oh yes, all of them. As a matter of fact, one of the other things we did was climb on top of the garages and jump from garage to garage.
We did that too, yeah.
And one of my other fond memories is my sister, that's 13 months older than me. At that time, she was like a tomboy. She thought she could do everything we could do. And she jumped from one garage to the other and missed and fell into a garbage can. And we laughed. She didn't hurt herself, but she was so embarrassed. She stopped hanging out with us after that. Her tomboy days were like over, you know.
So like if you played baseball, the big thing for us was, and I grew up by Humboldt Park, so we could just walk to the park, is who had a ball. And we would hit that league ball until the cover was off and it was a bunch of string, and then then the ball, we don't have a ball anymore. So
we didn't play with league balls. We played with clinchers. We played 16-inch softball.
But even that will unravel after time too, right?
Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. It would start out pretty hard, even to the hand, but after a day or two of hitting that ball, it would soften up, and it would take probably a couple of months before it was useless.
Yeah, and a lot of people in the world or in this country, they don't even know what 16-inch softball is. That's a very Chicago thing that we have.
Chicago.
And it's so much fun.
Oh my goodness, yes.
How many fingers we jam and stuff.
Oh
and all
my
that stuff.
goodness, yes. Because I never did. I played league ball because I was like into all of the sports. I wasn't very good at it, but I played. I swam. I did all sorts of things as a kid. So that's another story I want to get to. It's about sports, But that's what we did in the alley. Is we pretty much played baseball with the clincher and football, and so I got pretty good at that.
Did you have a lot of rats in your neighborhood? Because we had rats all over the place where I grew up.
I don't have a memory that includes rats as an issue.
Okay, that's interesting.
I didn't even in the house. I don't remember mice traps. I've never had to handle one, or I don't know why. You mentioned it's the first time it's even come to mind.
Okay, I was just curious. There was a little record store on Division, and I don't know why, but they sold these little slingshots, and they were 10 cents.
Yes.
And they had, a rubber band, a little patch, and they were kind of thick wire, and you could get a good head of steam on them. And whenever we had a dime, we'd go buy a slingshot, and we'd use them until the rubber bands broke. Yeah. So a couple times we bagged rats.
Really?
And I think the rats had already eaten some kind of poison because they're slow and sluggish. And little boys, this is like a dream, right? Yeah. You're getting to whack a rat with the slingshot you just bought. And then we did another thing. We would go through the alley and collect the pop tabs from the cans because they'd be all over the alley. Right. And we'd break the sharp piece off and just keep the ring. Yeah. And then we would take a piece of wood that would be maybe 2 or 3 feet long. We put a nail in it, and then we would attach rubber bands that would stretch to the other end of this stick, and we'd put a clothespin on it.
Really?
So then we would put those little tabs in
the clothespin,
in the rubber band, and then the clothespin would hold it down, and we actually had a weapon. So the rubber band would pull the little thing, and it flew like a frisbee. Yeah. And then we would have fights like dummies with these things. These little pop tabs would be flying at each other and stuff, but the stuff you invent when you're, growing up in that era, we did all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, another story comes to mind about my childhood now. You mentioned the little guns and things of that nature. My parents didn't want us to have guns when we were kids, so my friends all had guns. They had little pistols and stuff like that. And even one of them ended up with a gun that could shoot out little plastic,
the little yellow beads or whatever?
Beads or bullets or things like that.
I had one of those.
They didn't go far, nothing like that. They really couldn't hurt. It wasn't like a BB gun or nothing like that. But my friends all had that, and we used to play cowboys and Indians, and I'd have to use a stick and just say bang, and of course, my shots never hit anybody.
Right. You missed.
And I even remember a trip that we took to Kansas City. We went to, with my mother and my sister that's 18 months older than me, we went to Kansas City, and I was probably 5 years old. We took a train down to Kansas City. That's where my grandmother and my aunts and stuff lived. And that was a fun trip, and it was for Christmas, because we got Christmas presents, and I got a cowboy outfit and a cap gun, and my mother took the cap gun, and I never was able to play with it.
Wow.
And it was like that so early on that I was never really too bothered by it, other than the fact that it was embarrassing playing with my buddies, because they took advantage of me and me saying bang with the stick in my hand and nothing going on.
So where did this come from with your parents not wanting you guys to play with guns? Was it based on their faith, or?
I think it was, they were very religious people. I think it was connected to that. Now, the effect of that is that I've never owned a gun in my life. And I had an incident that happened when I was living in Beverly. My kids were teenagers, young teenagers, and someone threw a brick through my front window, and I didn't know what it was all about. And we called the police, and they came and they did a report, and there was really nothing to investigate too much, you know. So my brother-in-law loaned me his gun, and he showed me how to use it. It all made sense and stuff like that. I couldn't sleep that night with that gun in the house. It was just too weird. And so the next day, I just gave him the gun back. So I've never had a gun, never
That's
wanted
awesome.
a gun, never needed a gun.
Yeah. I have a lot of them, and I never needed one either.
Yeah,
So.
that's good. So it just came to mind when you mentioned shooting the thing.
Okay, so let's pick up the story now. We got the neighborhood breakdown, and anything in the grammar school prior to high school that's left that we want to talk about.
Oh yeah. Well, my childhood was interesting. Like I said, I was into everything. I started going up to Ogden Park and learned how to swim when I was probably 6 or 7 years old.
And you went by yourself?
I went by myself to Ogden Park.
Isn't that crazy?
I went to day camp one year with my older brother. He was 4 years older than me. We went to Washington Park on the bus. And I was probably 6 years old, and he was 10. And the next year, I went by myself because he didn't want to go anymore. So I was 7 years old, and I went to Washington Park in the summertime for day camp from, whatever the time was, from 9 till 3 or something like that. And I did that by myself. So I was a pretty independent little guy. I was making my quarter a day walking Tiger. I always had money. I saved my little money.
You got your shoe shine in. You got your extortion of my sisters, right?
I had all sorts of deals. I think from the time I was probably, I would have to say maybe 10 years old, 10 or 11 years old, I made enough money that I contributed to all of the clothes that I bought. My mother would buy them, but she'd get the money from me, because we didn't have a lot of money, and I had money, and I didn't really need money, other than to buy the little candy and stuff. What I need money for, So I had my shoebox with money in there, and she said, "How much money you got, Jimmy?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Let's count it," and I might have $13 or $27 or something like that. And she said, "Well, I'm gonna need to take $20 to get something for you to wear." And I'm like, "Okay, fine with me.
That's awesome.
That's what money's for. And go ahead, Mom, take it."
So I have to ask you this, and this is my opinion. To me, work ethic, especially nowadays, is more important than an education. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Education is helpful. It gives you an opportunity that you might not otherwise have, but there's no assurance that it's going to be useful and that you're going to take advantage of it. Work ethic, you'll figure out what to do, and you'll always probably be close to maxing out your potential if you got a good work ethic. Where education doesn't assure that.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, where are we at now?
So let's see. As a child, I made money.
Where are you with your faith through all of this time period? I know you see your mother and father were faithful.
Yes, they raised us in the church. We went to church twice a week, Wednesday nights and Sundays. I didn't buy into anything that I was told. I particularly did not like the fire and brimstone kind of messages that were weekly, about burning in hell if you don't give your heart to the Lord kind of messages. I didn't like that. It made no sense that even as a young person, that if there's a God above, that he would be so mean, and vindictive and stuff like that. So I didn't buy into it. And so, but I went to church, and what I used to do was, as soon as Flash Gordon started coming on Sundays, when church started, I always sat in the back, and I would sneak out and go back home and watch Flash Gordon on TV. And then I'd come back to church because I knew when church was going to get out, and I'd ask my cousin, what did Brother Morgan talk about? And he would tell me, and Brother Morgan was a pastor, And I said, what did he preach about? And he said, oh, I don't know. He said something about this. I said, good, thanks, man. And as soon as we get in the car, I said, the pastor preached today. When he said such and such, I said, I was so impressed, And they would never say, that was before my mother said, I didn't see you. Where were you? Where were you sitting? Because it was a pretty nice sized church and 300 seats or something like that, And I said, and I was in the back of, on the side, I had to go to the bathroom and came back. And, so this went on for probably a year or two like that. So somewhere around the age of 13 or 14, I told my mother, I said, I'm not going to church anymore. And she said, why? I said, because I don't want to. And she says, okay, you're old enough to decide for yourself. And I stopped going to church. And the rest of the kids older than me, all of them, they still went to church, But that was sort of my relationship with my parents it was a quiet one, I did get in trouble, like I said, and my dilemmas with my dad would pile up because he was working all the time, and my mother would say, I'm telling your dad. And I'm like, well, okay, So she would tell him and he'd get home. So she said, Jimmy didn't empty the garbage. He didn't cut the grass, or he didn't come home till 10 o'clock and he's supposed to be home at 8 o'clock. And my dad said, boy, I'm going to get you. These things are piling up. I'm going to get you. And so I'm like, yeah, right. And sooner or later, the pile would get pretty high. And he would take me into the bathroom and take his strap off, and I would get a whipping, and he'd make me stand in the tub so I couldn't get away from him, And he would, if he had 12 things that had piled in the pile, he would remember everything in the pile, and he would give me a hit for every thing that he let me slide, or, and the whole thing lasted a couple of minutes, and I cried, and the guy got over it, and he got over it, and he went to sleep, and life went on, and it was like that, but it was never traumatic. It didn't scar me. It didn't, and they were, I look back at my childhood, and I'm pleased with how it went.
Your parents were kind of on the cutting edge, though, that your mother would just tell you, at 13 or 14, you're old enough now to make your own decision.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And your dad with giving you stick shift and then drive the car. They gave you some slack. They gave you some independence.
They saw something in me, I think, because like I said, I was like, they call them valedictorian. Mm-hmm. In grammar school, I was that person between me and Lorraine Campbell from first grade through sixth grade. It was going to be her or me. That was number one for the semester. So I was always getting S's. They didn't have A's and B's. There were S's and E's and G's. S was the best for superior, and E for excellent, and G for good.
Okay, so I was Chicago Public School as well. The E was the highest grade. That was excellent. A G was good.
Yes.
We had S was satisfactory in our report card.
And ours, S was superior.
Okay.
S's were better than E's. And so it's a S, E, G, F. No, F was fair, and U was unsatisfactory.
I remember the U. We had the U's too.
Yeah. Right. And so I was a good student. Did you read a lot, or just your school books? Well, there's another story there too. So no, I didn't. I could read. My sister. One of the things we did when we were kids, we didn't have a lot of entertainment. Not many things on TV. We played rock school. And we'd be sitting on the porch, and you had to answer questions correct to move up one stair and to see who can get to the top the quickest. And I won quite a lot, even though I was the fifth out of six. Mm-hmm. And my sister, who was the oldest, was always the teacher because she was bossy anyway. So she was babysitting and teaching and all. You gotta be careful how you talk about your siblings. They're gonna watch this and get mad. Oh yeah, well no, they've heard all of this before. Okay, just making sure. So she was bossy, but She taught me math. I knew my timetables before I even went to kindergarten.
Wow.
And I could read also before I went to kindergarten. So she was teaching me stuff, and I was absorbing it fast, So my parents kind of knew that about me, so they didn't. And like I said, my sisters kept my mother busy, and my father worked all the time. So they didn't spend a lot of time worrying about me.
All right. So and you don't have to answer this if it incriminates you.
Right.
You're a father, a grandfather, and a great-grandfather.
Right.
And my contention is, and I'm a father and a grandfather, we do have our favorites.
Mm-hmm.
We love them all the same,
Mm-hmm.
but we do have our favorites. Do you think you were your father's favorite? I mean, you spent the most time with him, didn't you?
Yes. But my older brother was impressive too. He was substantial in the church, and he was a singer and sort of an actor. So he was in school plays and he went into the Marines. And,
Oh, wow.
And so he was impressive, and he was more in their world than I was.
I got you.
So I never got the sense that I was favored. I just they didn't lecture me, and I'm glad they didn't, because I wouldn't have respected what they was telling me to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? I still thought I was the smartest thing going on. So they didn't lecture me. They probably said it wouldn't do any good. He's going to make up his own mind anyway.
But you probably you maintained a good balance, because you were smart and you were a little bit of a troublemaker,
Right.
but they could see they gave you a little more latitude because they knew they could, right?
Oh yeah.
Your mother probably worried way more, like you said, with her daughters, right?
Oh yeah. And so I was of value to them. It was a good arrangement between my parents and me. I have nothing. I even remember when I told my mother, I said, Mom, I'm going to get married. I need you to go with me down to City Hall to get my license because I'm underage. She says, okay. She said, when we going?
Wow.
She didn't say, who are you marrying and why are you getting married?
That's crazy.
Now, she knew who I was marrying because she knew Bern. She knew her. She told me, she said, you like her before I even knew I liked her.
How about that?
But it was, she just said, okay. And I knew Bern's father. Now, all that's another story too. That's is downright interesting as well. So I'm gonna go back to grammar school to talk about Englewood and some of the challenges that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's say I'm in the upper grade center at Beale, okay, which is like 61st and Sangamon, and that's also in Englewood, but further east. Okay, and so it's about 1.5 miles away from my house, and I walk there every day. But Beale was also close to the high school called Englewood. And in the late 50s, that's when the gangs were just beginning in the city. And I think the gangs that come to mind were the Satan Lovers and the Cobras. They had a couple of other gangs in there. And so I had a lot of friends, and some of them became gang members, but I never became a gang member. And I was never really pressured to become a gang member because I was sort of like always into sports, on a team doing something, all right? Maybe I got a bye because of that. I don't really know. So one of my experiences, I'm coming home from the swimming pool from Ogden Park, and there's a softball game going on. And they asked me to join in, and I knew at least half of the guys there. There was some 20, 25 guys there, 9 on each side, and so they needed me to play because they were short somebody left or didn't show up or something like that. So I'm playing, and I think I'm in the 7th grade at the time. Okay, so I'm like 11 or 12 years old, and I forget if I think I was playing shortstop or something. I tagged the guy out, and he said he was safe. And I said, "No, you're out." And he said, "Safe." There was no umpires, so he he got mad and wanted to start a fight, you know, and he was one of the gang members. So I'm like, you're out. I'm standing my ground, and he throws up his fist and he wants to fight, and I'm like, well, bring it, And so we started, and I decked him 2 times in a row, And the second time I decked him, I jumped on top of him, and then somebody punched me in the back of the head, and they pulled me off of him and said, "Let's start over." So I know I can handle this guy, but I knew that something was going on here that I didn't like, So they really wanted him to win, but it wasn't going to happen. So I said, "Here's what I'm going to do. I'm running home." So I turned around and started running home, and they really didn't chase me. Okay, and so the next day, let's say this was a Tuesday or something like that. The next day, I didn't go to school, and my mother she said, "Well, what's wrong?" She thought I don't feel good, So the second day I didn't want to go either because I didn't know how to deal with this. I didn't know how to talk to my parents about it.
Did you think you were going to get jumped or something? Like you're going to gang up on you, or?
I didn't know. It was just so uncertain. I was like, that's how my brain worked. Then I'm just not going to go until it gets figured out. So one of my buddies came to the house, and he said, "We didn't see you at school." And he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to try to kill me if I go to school. I don't know what the deal is." He says, "No." He said, "Forget about it." He said, "It's peace. Everything's all right. They ain't gonna mess with you. You're good." And I'm like, "So are you sure?" He said, "Sure." And I went back to school, and I saw the guy, and we never talked again. Mm-hmm. He was a neighborhood guy. We would just avoid each other.
Yeah.
But that was a little bit of a trauma for 11 or 12-year-old.
Yeah,
because I didn't know how to think that through at all.
Did you see any gang violence growing up? And if you did, what kind of violence?
Well, also while I was at Beale, a guy that became my brother-in-law later, Big Keith, all right. He was a target of gang members, and because he was a big boy. He was if at the age of he was a year older than me, maybe a year and a half older than me, but we were in the same class because he had failed and stuff like that, So let's say he was 14, and he was probably 6'2", 6'3", maybe 250. Big boy, bigger than all these other 8th graders. Okay, and I'm in 8th grade at the time, so I knew him because I'll tell you about that because I knew him. I knew his whole family. All right, so and he wasn't like a great friend of mine, but he was a neighborhood person that I knew, and he was okay, and I was okay with him. At any rate, they decided that they were going to jump him, And he had to run home that day, and he told his brother-in-law, who was a grown man, Kane was probably at the time 25, 30, and he came up to Bill. I don't know if this was at the end of the day or lunchtime. More than likely it was the end of the day. And that's when the gang members was going to jump Keith and beat him up. And Kane said, "Oh no, it ain't going like this." And I think Kane may have had a gun on him. I mean, Kane was a different kind of guy. And the gang members, like, back then they didn't have guns. They were more into chains and knives and things like that, brass knuckles but not guns, And Kane said, "No, you guys want to jump him, you're going to have to fight him one at a time." And so they thought they could do that. And Keith beat all of them up. He beat about 7 of them up, one at a time, So that's sort of the violence that I saw. That was pretty much the most. I think in high school, I'm a different kind of guy. So one of the things I wrote down early on is that I'm fearless. And I wanted to mention that I'm not reckless, but I don't remember, even when I had the fight in the park. It was all I kind of knew when the odds were against me, and it was a smart thing to do was to run. But I didn't run because I was afraid. I ran because it made sense to get the hell out of there, And so even in high school, Lindblom was probably 90% white when I got there. When I graduated, it was probably, it was probably 50, probably 75-25 when I graduated. So 90% white when I got there and 75% white when I left. Okay, so that neighborhood didn't change nowhere near as fast as the street that I was living on, and in terms of red line and stuff like that. So we're walking home from Lindblom, and I'm a freshman, and all the black kids are coming down 61st Street, heading toward Ashland, and because we all lived on the other side of Ashland, on the east side of Ashland.
Was that the dividing line then?
The dividing line.
So if you were white, you didn't want to go on that side of Ashland, right?
You didn't want to live on that side. You might go on that side because we still have friends, white folks that were friends and stuff like that. So, and that's another story. All right. So anyway, I probably hadn't been in high school a couple of weeks or something, and I'm walking home with somebody. I don't know who it was. I don't remember particularly. Somebody I knew. And someone yelled, "Race riot." And all the black kids start running toward Ashland. And I'm like, I ain't running, And, I don't, so what? Race riot, me, I know what the idea of it was. I'm like, well, I'm not running. So the white kids would chase the black kids that ran. The white kids run right past me and my friend because we weren't running. They didn't really want to catch anybody and beat them up. They just wanted to chase them, And then it sort of became, at that point in time, almost like a sort of an inside joke. The race tension in the city wasn't really the race tension in our classrooms. It really wasn't a real thing.
Let me ask you a question about that time frame. What year roughly would that have been?
1962.
Okay, so the civil rights didn't start till a little bit later.
A little bit later.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like Martin Luther King, I think, was killed in 68. So to give you an idea, so everything that Martin Luther King was doing was done probably in the 2-3 years leading up to the time that he got killed. So so it wasn't a big deal in high school. So we would talk about race sometimes, and like my wife, she lived in the party house.
What does that mean?
It means that her parents didn't like her to go out, but they didn't mind her having parties. She would throw the parties. Okay, so we when she graduated, or we had a class sing party and a graduation party. When we graduated from high school, we graduated together, and so she had a party, and if there was 50 kids there, half of them were white from the other side of Ashland. They came over into Englewood because Byrne was throwing a party and they wanted to be at the party. So there may have been race tension in the city, in the news, but it wasn't affecting our friendships at school. I played football for almost 4 years there, and then I had a whole bunch of white friends. We even had a sort of a standing joke that that if it was allowed, who would you be dating in the other race? You know, and the girl that I would have dated, her name was Jo Karen Copey, because she was a nice little cutie, you know. And I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Some 25 years later, I'm working at Lake Book Manufacturing. I'm the director of operations, okay? And we needed to hire a personnel assistant because the personnel manager we had, we knew he was going to be leaving. So we wanted to get a personnel assistant, and maybe we could handle that position with an assistant for a while rather than someone more expensive. So the lady that interviewed, her name was Jo Karen something or Joanne something. And she seemed pretty smart. She seemed to be capable. And I interviewed her and hired her. And she said, you don't remember me, do you? And I'm like, no. She said, we graduated together. I said, well, I don't understand the name. She said, well, this is my married name. She said, I'm Jo Karen Copey. And I'm like, oh my God, because she was about 50 pounds heavier, and you know, she just didn't look like the same young girl anymore. You know, so
that's funny. I want to backtrack you real quick because we're gonna talk a lot about racism because you have a perspective that I don't. Was dating outside of your race back then, that was a no-no and that never happened, or did it happen rarely?
It didn't happen. Now, but I'm going to tell you about my wife.
Another shout out to one of our sponsors, Nevis Nutrition, which is a vitamin and supplement shop in Lamont. Owner Joe Bosco, dear friend of mine. Joe is super knowledgeable in nutrition, extremely knowledgeable in fitness. All the top athletes, weightlifters, bodybuilders, they go over there. He's really instrumental in help coaching our young athletes too. He's located in Lamont. I'll put the address in the description as well.
Her mother was Creole. She was French and Indian, American Indian and a French mother.
So she's white. The mother's
not really. So here's her heritage. So her father was an American Indian.
Oh, I got you.
So, all right, and her mother was French. My would have been my wife's grandmother was French, and her grandfather was an American Indian, and her mother was considered Creole because of that. Because it was down.
I got you.
It's down in Florida, in Pensacola. She had 6 siblings, and 3 of them, or 2 of them, no, 4 of them looked like they were white. And 2 of them looked more Indian or Hispanic. Well, my mother-in-law looked Indian or Hispanic. So she got sent up north with her auntie to be raised up in Chicago. She got almost like moved out of the family so that the rest of them could be white. Could be in that white world. All right. So she married Ed Cheney, my father-in-law, whose mother was white, whose father was black. So he's a very light-skinned guy. He was the same complexion as you. My mother-in-law was a little bit darker. She looked more Hispanic-like. My wife's sisters and brothers had the same sort of mix of looks. Her older brother, Eddie, looked like a white guy, all right? Byrne looked like a white girl. No one would think she's black, all right? Black to the core. If you talk to her, she'll tell you she wasn't trying to pass for white, but if you met her, you think she was white, all right? So, so that was the environment that we grew up in. So, but in terms of officially dating outside of the race, it didn't happen. I wouldn't say that it wasn't allowed. I just didn't know of it. It just wasn't happening. But I married a woman that looked like she was white, and she's, I remember, which is going to kind of cross over into my comments about fearlessness. We had been married 6 months. She was 9 months pregnant, or 8 months pregnant, and we're walking from 63rd and Normal, the grocery store, to our apartment at 64th and Low. We had been married 4 or 5 months. Martin Luther King had been killed that weekend. The city was on fire, and she looks like she's white and she's pregnant, and I'm with her.
Wow.
All right. And the gangs were out in force, ready to burn every business that they thought was white down. Okay. And we're walking down Low, and I knew that the way to get through this without incident, or at least I felt the way to get through this without incident was to be calm. And to not lose eye contact with these guys, because they were coming and they were wild. I could tell they were looking for something to mess with. And we had a shopping cart. That's where our groceries was in it, And I looked at every one of them that I could, and I said, "Hey, what's up, you guys? How you doing? What's up, man? What's happening?" Every single one of them, and we walked right on through them. And that was not the first time I've been in a situation like that. I was getting off the bus coming home from work when we lived on Laughlin in Englewood, and it was probably midnight, and I turned the corner on Laughlin, heading home, and there was a gang of guys there that were waiting for another gang to ambush them. But they weren't my neighborhood guys, And again, and it was a traumatic situation. And instead of my heartbeat going up, it went down. I got really, really calm. And I went right through these guys. I wasn't going to turn around and run. That would have been a stupid thing to do. I walked right in the midst of them and right through them. And I spoke to every one of them I made contact with. And one of the guys says, "Hey, he's all right. That's Dean. That's my barber." Because I was cutting hair in my dad's barbershop too, on the side, So I made it through that. But the point is that it was a dangerous situation. And my reaction was not fear. It wasn't, I wouldn't call it bravery. I just said, my demeanor was calm. And that happened more than once in my life.
What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't know. I was working in an oil refinery, food oil refinery. I was a packaging superintendent at the time. And everybody started yelling, saying, "John Smith is in short in tank 9. We think he's dead." So this is my department. So I'm running over there, and everybody's getting out the way, and I run up the stairs to get to the top of the tank, and I look down in there, and there's this maintenance guy laying there on the steam coils, and I couldn't tell if he was dead or his neck was broken or stuff like that. But the whole process of getting there and seeing it and taking action, again, I was calm. It wasn't the reverse of that. And I went down into the tank. The union steward, he went down before me, because it was like 15 steps, 15-foot tank, and there was no oil in the tank. And so Walter Posey went down the ladder, and I was right behind him. And when I got halfway down the ladder, Walter Posey's eyes started rolling around his head, and he fell back on his behind. And I shot back up the ladder because I realized at that point it was nitrogen in the tank, and that's what caused people to pass out. They didn't check that tank before they went into it. And so when I got to the top, I was passing out, and they caught me by my clothes and pulled me out. But again, in retrospect, that was still one of them situations where instead of adrenaline pushing me, it was quite the reverse. It was calmness. Another time we had a shortening tank blew up like a can. It was a big tank, probably 18 feet across and maybe 25 feet up and down. Probably hold 150,000 pounds, and it blew up like a can blowing up, and it tore the roof off of that particular building. It was a big explosion, and we had to clear the plant. And at this time, I'm the refinery superintendent, so we had to figure out what was going on. And it turned out that some maintenance guy was working in the gas plant. We made our own hydrogen gas from methane, and he did something wrong with the check valve, and all the hydrogen got into the nitrogen lines, and so we had hydrogen gas at the surface of all these tanks. So now we got like 100 tanks, and all of them are like bombs.
Wow.
And we had to figure out what to do to diffuse it. And again, that was a situation where instead of me getting nervous and adrenaline motivated, I was absolutely scarily calm. So that we can figure out practically what are we going to do next, and what's the best way to go forward.
We're going to circle back to this as we get into our enlightenment journey. We're going to circle back to this, but behind me you see the statue of Leonidas right here, and he was the king of the Spartans, right? Spartan is a warrior culture. Mm-hmm. And there's a movie called 300 where the 300 Spartans.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
So if you remember in the movie, they send him to the city when he's like 13. He's got to survive on the streets, right?
Yes.
And then he meets the wolf. He's in between this crevice, and the wolf's coming at him, and he goes, it isn't fear that he felt, but a heightened sense of things, the air, the snow, the whatever. And you reminded me of that.
I remember that scene now. I saw that movie. I like that movie.
Yeah.
What was the guy's name there? He's been in a lot of things, the guy that played in 300.
I think it's Gerard Butler.
Gerard Butler. Yeah. He was good in that. That was a good movie.
Yeah, real good movie.
Yeah.
All right. So do you want to... But we're jumping around into timelines. Mm-hmm. So you finish school, and you take it from So together. Yeah,
So let me go to the next part of the drama of my life. So I knew my wife. I saw her for the first time when she was about 6 years old. So I'm 6 or 7 years old. I'm going up to Ogden Park to go swimming, and I'm going down Loomis, which is about a block away from my house. And there's Lily Moore, that's a classmate of mine, and this little scrungy, blonde-haired, skinny little girl, And I didn't think of her in terms of looking like she was white. I wasn't even thinking in terms of races and stuff like that. She was just weird looking, And so I said, hey, Lily. She says, hi. And I said, what are you guys doing? She said, we're selling lemonade. And I said, well, how much is it? She says, 3 cents, So I said, okay, give me a cup. And so they had a little paper cup, and they gave me the lemonade, and it tasted like crap. It was not even cold. And I'm like, oh, this is terrible. So I looked at Bern. I said, hi. And she didn't say anything. So I asked her, I said, what's wrong with her? She said, oh, that's Bernadette. She's just shy. I'm like, oh, whatever, So I found out over the months and years shortly thereafter that she lived right down the street from Millie Moore on Loomis. And that's where Keith lived, the big kid that I graduated with. So
The one that beat up all the gang guys one at a time, right?
yeah. So I also found out that her father was Mr. Cheney, and he was my dad's customer in the barbershop that was now on 63rd and Loomis, which is right around the corner from where they live and not far from where we live, So he had a first barbershop on Normal. It was a smaller barbershop, and then he sold that one, bought a bigger one that was closer to home in Englewood, all right? So I knew Ed Cheney because I used to shine his shoes, okay? In the barbershop on 63rd and Loomis. So I know the dad, I know the brother. The lady that worked in the drugstore, her name was Arlette. She was gorgeous, man. She looked like a movie star. And so I was infatuated with her as a kid. As I was going to the swimming pool or coming home from the swimming pool, I'd go in the drugstore. They had a little fountain area in there where you can get soda pop and maybe a scoop of ice cream or something like that. They had 3 or 4 stools. I'd go in there and buy a cherry phosphate and take me an hour to drink it just so I could look at her. That was Burns' big sister. All right. So she had an older sister that was older than Arlette, who had kids that were Burns' age almost.
Oh, wow. So she was the baby of the whole crew?
Yeah, Byrne was the baby. So Zita's still alive. She's 95 years old, 94 years old. So I knew Byrne, and I even found out later in life, after we were married almost, that we were in the water show and the gym show together at Ogden Park. I didn't know who she was. But that was a group of sort of dancing and swimming things where there was 40 or 50 kids in it. And she had pictures of that event. And she said, and there you are right there, over there and that kind of thing. So we get to high school. Now, I know who she is. I know her name is Bernadette. I know her brother's Keith. I know that I used to be in love with her older sister, Arlette. At the drugstore. Yeah. So, and she knows who I am, because I'm the football star, and I'm the guy that lives around the corner, and Dad owns the barbershop, and they all get their hair cut there, and all of this. So we know of each other. So if we saw each other on the street, we would nod or say hello or something like that. And she was at the time, most of the time in high school, she was dating the basketball star, Milton. Okay, so he started dating her when she was a freshman and he was a senior. Okay, her parents didn't like him because he was too old for her. All right, so that relationship was always a sneaking relationship. So. And which was normal. I did that with my sisters, taking them to the bar, to Arnold LeBranch's house, and Patty with Paul Bob. All of that was sneaking around kind of stuff, So it was kind of normal. So getting to our last semester at Lindblom, and Byrne comes up to me and she says, and it's a division, which is like a study hall, with a half an hour period where you can catch up on your homework and stuff like that. And so she comes up to me and she said, can I sit right here next to you? And I'm like, sit anywhere you want, So she sat there and we started talking. She was just a flat out delight. I mean, as it turned out, from that moment on, for the rest of my life, she was the funniest person I've ever met.
All right, let me pause you. Prior to this flashpoint,
yeah,
had you dated anybody before?
Oh yeah, I had, from the time I got my first kiss from Brenda Deal, I started hooking up with somebody.
We didn't talk about that.
So yes, I always had like a girlfriend, always. Okay. So from the time I got my first French kiss to Byrne, probably a half a dozen girls over a 3-year period. Okay. So yes. So
I'll ask you a question. You don't have to answer it if it's too incriminating. Back then, are you having physical intimacy at that time, or
no,
is
no,
that's a
no.
taboo, right? I mean,
I don't know if it's taboo. I wasn't.
Okay.
You know, and that's a sort of a messy story of my life, but I can talk about it.
Yeah.
All right. But at any rate, so we get to senior in high school, and Bern comes up to me and she said, "Can I sit here?" I'm like, "Sure, you can sit anywhere you want." So she sat down. We started talking, and the conversation just flowed. I mean, it was so effortless talking to her, you know. But even that day or the next day, she said, I want you to do me a favor. I'm like, whoa, what? And she says, I want you to be my fake boyfriend. I'm like, well, and I knew what she was talking about. And I said, well, what does that involve, actually? She said, well, I want you to come by the house and you know, maybe hang out with us a couple of times a week, and you know, maybe come to dinner for, you know, like for Thanksgiving. You know, I'd like to invite you over, my boyfriend, come over for dinner. And I'm like, well, what's in it for me? You know, it's still transactional.
Yeah.
You know? And she said, well, what do you want? I said, I want a date with your cousin, Celestine. I said, because she's fine. You know? She said, I'll make it happen. You know? So we cut a deal, all right? And I ended up going on a couple of dates with Celestine, and it was terrible. She had the personality of a garage door, man. She was just bad, you know? She looked good, but I don't know, she was a box of rocks, you know? So that didn't go well. So
what was her motivation to have the fake boyfriend? I don't understand that part of it.
So that's the next part
Okay,
of the story.
sorry,
All
yep.
right, so I'm going. The motivation is so that I can take her on a date and drop her off at the corner so she can get in Milton's car and they can go on a date. That was the fake boyfriend. All this was for that. All right.
That's a flashback from going with your sisters, right? You tagging along with them while they're doing their thing.
Oh yeah. You know, so the fact that we got along so well and our togetherness was almost magical. You know, beyond description. It wasn't love. It didn't have description. We didn't talk about it, but we used to make out, you know.
While you were the fake boyfriend?
Yes.
Wow.
And it was just wonderful. It was actually wonderful. And everybody around us knew we were in love before we knew we were in love, you know. I didn't find this out till later, so we do our fakeness stuff. And so finally it dawned on me and on her that this is something real is happening here. So this was right around graduation or right before graduation, right around Christmas, because we graduated in January. It was the last.
Was that normal?
That was the last January graduation in the public school system in January 1966. From that point on, it was only June graduation.
Okay, yeah. Never heard of that, yeah.
My mother knew I liked her. Her parents thought I was the real boyfriend. I think her brother knew that we were really serious. All of this before we were. So one of the parties, she had a graduation party, and I had taken out one other girl who wasn't graduating with us for my graduation date that night, and I couldn't wait to get rid of her at 10 or 10:30 that night so I can get to the party. So I come to the party at Bern's house. I'm going down the stairs, and some of her girlfriends say, he's here.
Oh, wow.
I'm like a big, and they all screamed, and they're like, I'm like, what the hell's going on here, you know?
Because she let the cat out of the bag with her girlfriends, didn't she?
Or her girlfriends just knew, like everybody else seemed to have known, that we were really into each other, even though we would declare, oh no, no, you know, that kind of thing. So we fell into each other's arms and kissed in front of everybody, which was
That's the official announcement, right?
Yeah, you know. So so it went like that. So we were basically inseparable. So she lived a half a block away from me. And during this fake boyfriend time, I was there for Thanksgiving dinner, like she said she was going to invite me to. And I was probably at her house 3 or 4 nights a week. And we would listen to music and dance, and we just had a ball. We just talked about everything under the
Okay,
sun.
so tell me your mindset then. She's got the boyfriend, but like, are you just completely falling for her, or are you keeping yourself
All right,
at an
so-
even keel during that fake boyfriend
Okay,
time?
so the last week of summer, my girlfriend, right before my last semester in high school that started in September, my girlfriend who lived across the street from me dumped me. She quit me.
Do you remember why? What she's told you or no?
Not so much.
Okay, that's
you know,
just curious.
Yeah, so I don't think it mattered a whole lot. You know, I was bothered because I really liked her. I wouldn't call it love. I didn't know what love was. You know, I really liked her. She was cool. She could dance. She was nice looking, and that kind of thing. And she dumped me. So let's say the next day I start school at Limblon. It's my last semester, and that's when Bern approached me about being her fake boyfriend. So I didn't even remember that Audrey dumped me. The thought of her and the remorse about being dumped lasted 24 hours at best. I was over with. I could care. I was having a ball, hanging out, being a fake boyfriend.
Yeah, and to recap, she has to sit next to you,
Uh-huh.
right? And then you hit it off right there. And then
Yeah.
shortly after, within a day or so, you said she asked you to be the fake boyfriend.
Yes, yeah. And then I started faking it like that day or the next day. So we started hanging out every 2-3 times a week.
She unbroke your heart, didn't she, from
No,
getting dumped?
I didn't even know it was happening.
Wow.
I didn't even know it was happening. So also I like the poetic justice. Audrey, the girl who dumped me, a month or 2 later calls me aside because she lived across the street from me. And she calls me over and I'm like, yeah, what's up? She says, you know, I don't know how to say this. She said, but I made a mistake. And I said, well, that's really a shame. I said, because we have to live and learn, and I've moved on. And it felt so good to say that to her, you know, because I had no idea that I didn't feel like I was in love with Bern. Just life was okay, and Audrey wasn't in it, and she dumped me, and she had to pay for it, and she paid for it by asking me back and me saying, forget about it, it ain't happening. So,
And I got to tell you, Jimmy, that same thing happened to me
yeah,
in high school. I
Really?
got dumped, and
Yeah.
it was heartbreaking for instance, my first girl I really liked.
yeah.
And then I got asked out by a senior, and then we started a relationship. And I was outside throwing the discus, and the old girlfriend walked up to me.
Uh-huh.
Said the same thing. I made a mistake, and blah blah blah. I go, I'm taken.
Didn't it
She
feel
started to
good?
cry too.
Didn't that feel good?
Hell yeah, it did.
I wouldn't have anticipated, but when it happened, I'm like, yes.
That's awesome.
Yes. So we graduate, Bern and I, we graduate. So we really know this is happening, you know, and we're still not wrapping words around it, you know, and we hadn't had sex or nothing like that, but only because it hasn't been possible or convenient, you know, because it wasn't an easy thing to do back then, to find a place and get some privacy.
Yeah, and I got to
stuff.
ask you this, because she was a freshman dating a senior.
Yeah.
Did she have a little more worldliness about her because
Sure,
of that?
she did. Absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Absolutely.
Fair enough.
And much more than me. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
And I'll just say a little bit more about that too. All right. But at any rate, we graduate from high school, and this is early February. I said, "This is crazy, Bern." I said, we're together. That's what we do. We adore each other. I said, I want you to be my official girlfriend. And she said, let me think about it. I'm like, what? You want to think about it after the way we carry on? And she said, I got to do some housekeeping. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, She says, I quit Milton back in early December, and I with the intent of calling him back up and making up, and I forgot. So she said, I haven't talked to him in probably 2 months. She says, I want to officially tell him that it's over. And I'm like, well, okay, well, do whatever you got to do. So we actually started dating then, officially.
Officially on paper.
Yeah, so right after we graduated from high school, she was the first person I had sex with, and I had a couple of opportunities, but
you don't have to get graphic. But how does that go down? You got a hotel room, or how did you?
We burned. Oh no, it's at my sister's house, who's now married. And my other sister, Mary Louise, was living with her because she's now separated from her husband. All right. And so Mary Louise just had to let us use her room.
She knew what it was for, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So Bern, she busted the cherry for me, But and the thing about the sex, and it was wonderful. But the thing about sex, I didn't understand. There was nobody to talk to about this stuff. There was no porn in the world back then, and I didn't know in the world I was going to talk to my dad about this stuff or my brother. And according to my friends, they thought I was worldly, so they were asking me for advice, right, and I was giving it. My first time was I got a shot at it. It was so unsexy and unromantic. I had a girlfriend who had a child. So I was probably 16 years old. She was probably 20. All right. And we were supposed to have sex. And I don't really know how it goes or what to do or how to get excited. There's no book to read. There's no one to talk to. And she was like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So
coach me here.
Yeah, so basically nothing happened. So that was the first failure. And I'm like, I'm disappointed. I didn't internalize and then get too hard on myself about it. I'm like, I don't know what this, something's not right, with how this is going on, because I hear great things about sex, and I'm waiting for the light bulb to come on and the sparks to fly, and nothing's happening, And so the next time I almost had sex was with Audrey, the one that dumped me, and probably that summer before she dumped me, earlier that summer, because we probably only were dating for less than a year. That's typically what I had a girlfriend that lasts about 6 months, and something would happen. They would move or something, So it didn't happen, but it was also very like that. It was at my sister's house, who lived upstairs from us, and they've been drinking and stuff like that, and they kind of knew we wanted to have sex, so they let us go in the front bedroom, and we were supposed to go in there, and I was supposed to go in there and put it in, and I'm like, well, what's this? How does this work? This is, I'm like, this is crazy. And I said, let's forget about this. Let's forget about this and leave. And so we left the room. They said, oh, was it good? And I'm like, it wasn't good. It didn't happen. And he said, why? I said, I guess we're not in the mood. I don't know. I don't even know what the fucking mood is supposed to be, And I wasn't like telling everybody I never had sex, because it wasn't their business.
Right.
But
it was okay if they assumed you were, right?
It was all right if they assumed I was. So it burned. I told her, I said, I got a secret I'm going to tell you, And she says, oh, what is that? I said, I'm going to tell you after we have sex, And when we went to have sex the first time, it was magical. It was what it was supposed to be. Okay. Everything was just right. All right. So she asked me after, she said, well, what was this? What's the secret you want to tell me? I said, You're my first. You're the first person I've ever had sex with in my life. She said, you're lying. You're lying sack of shit. I'm like, no, I'm not lying. I don't think she ever believed me, but that was the truth.
You guys had a connection. It just went the way it's supposed to go.
And I was 19 years old. I was a worldly guy, had girlfriends all my life, from the time I was 13 or 14. Had a couple of chances to have sex before, and it didn't work out because the magic wasn't there or whatever.
Do you think that the girlfriend before broke up with you because you didn't have sex? Because that's what happened to me with the one I told you about. I was naive. Wasn't going to make any move on her.
I don't know, and I don't care. I don't know.
Okay.
I never thought about it, and only thing I remember with glee is the fact that she came and asked for me to. She apologized and wanted me back, and I told her no. And that's the highlight of that whole relationship.
I got you.
So that was pretty much Bern and I were magical. So let me tell you about something else. I'm going to Valparaiso University. That's where I was when I dropped out. After one semester, I started in September. We graduated in January 66. In September of 66, I went to Valparaiso University. I was there for 6 months, and I dropped out because Bern got pregnant.
So this is like about 9 months into your relationship then, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so about 9 months into the relationship. And the relationship was going fine. She was disappointed that I went away, sort of, to school. Valparaiso was 50 miles away, so it wasn't that far, and I was coming home a lot of weekends, obviously, enough of them.
Right.
When she told me she was pregnant, I said, oh, wow. I said, and she says, I'm going to have this baby. And I'm like, okay. I said, well, I'm going to do everything that I need to do to be a good father, And she said, I don't need you to do anything. She said, we're going to get married or you're going to be out of my life. And I'm like, what? She said, I don't need you to be the daddy that lives around the corner. She says, I'm going to have this baby, and you better not even speak to him unless you are his daddy and you are my husband. She says, it's one or the other. You either in or you're out. I'm like, damn, that's harsh. And she said, well, you think about it.
And you're both teenagers still.
Yeah. I'm 19, she's 18, and I'm in school. I'm trying to get my life together and stuff. I don't even know why I'm in school and what I'm trying to get a degree in. I haven't figured anything out, And she said, well, it's you either in or out on this thing. So I'm like, well, the next day I said, I'm in. I said, because I can't have a son around the corner that I can't speak to, that I'm not allowed to interact with. That'll kill me. I said, so I want you to be my wife. She said, okay. So it was almost like a transaction, rather than a proposal. It wasn't a proposal. It was an agreement.
Yeah, but she had logic for asking you or telling you, and you had logic for saying yes.
Yes.
But were you scared then? Or what was the feeling? And you were like, oh boy, here we go, or I'm taking a gamble.
No, I loved her. I'd never given the idea of being a dad and a husband any thought. I never had an idea that I was ever going to get married at that point. She used to talk about it all the time, when we're going to get married. And I'm like, I was going along with, this is what ladies like to do. They like to look in the magazine and look at wedding dresses and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, that's what ladies do, I wasn't feeling it, but when she gave me that ultimatum, I understood that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I quit school. I dropped out, and I asked her dad if I could marry her. And they don't, at this point, they don't know she's pregnant. I knew him. I cut his hair a few times, used to shine his shoes
Yeah,
for
ate
years.
Thanksgiving as the fake boyfriend,
As
right?
the fake boyfriend, yes. I asked him if I could marry. He said yes. So Vietnam War is cranking at the time. All right, and I got a school deferment.
Is this 67?
67.
Okay.
67. And I got a school deferment. And I said, well, you know, this will probably last me at least till summer, even though I'm dropping out in January.
Right.
You know, and I said, by then I'll be married, because we had already picked a date. April 8th, we were going to get married. Going to get married down at City Hall. Wasn't going to be a big deal. Wasn't going to be no wedding, no reception, no nothing like that. You know, didn't have any money. I had to get a job. Got 2 jobs. That's another story too. But at any rate, so we got married in April, and I got laid off of both jobs that I had the weekend before we got married, maybe a week before we got married, because there was some kind of truck strike going on. So I was working at Continental Can full time, and at Sears part time.
What did you do at Sears?
I don't know. It was labor stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I don't even remember.
Where was the Sears at?
In the city somewhere.
Mhm.
I don't even remember that.
It's not
either.
problem. No, I'm just curious.
Yeah, and I probably hadn't only worked there for 3 or 4 months, because I got the job when I dropped out, and probably got the job in 1st of February. In April, they laid me off because of the truck strike. Right, so from both places. So the Thursday or Friday before we got married on Saturday, I got a job at a food oil refinery on the north side of Chicago called Durkee Famous Foods. And and it paid decently. I forget what it was, $3 or $4 an hour back then. That was decent. It wasn't minimum wage. Minimum wage, you can get a job making $1.50 an hour. So it was like $3 or $3.50 an hour. So I got a job there. I didn't start work until the Monday after I got married. Okay. And I had to take 3 buses to get there. Didn't have a car. We got a lease on an apartment in the apartment building on 64th and Low in Englewood, brand new building, but it wasn't finished yet. So I had to stay at Patty's house for a month, and until the apartment was ready. So I'm working at Durkee, and I wasn't there 2 or 3 weeks. My first job as a laborer. I was a hand palletizer, and we had to take these 50-pound cubes of shortening and stack them on a pallet. That's what I did all day long. All right. So it was a union shop too. So a bid went on the board, and take me long to figure out the mechanics of what's what and what's going on. And there was a bid on the board for a pumper, and it paid $4.25 an hour. Now I'm making $3.50, and I don't have any money at this point. You know, I took every penny I had to put down on the apartment that we were getting. I asked my dad if he can give me enough money so we could stay at the hotel to be like a honeymoon. He said, "Boy, you don't need none of that. Just stay at Patty's," you know. so I had no money. All right. So I had this. I had this. I didn't have the money to do anything. So when the bid hit the board, I signed it because it was like 75 cents an hour more. No one else in this whole refinery of a couple hundred people signed it. So I'm asking, why is no one signing this bid? They said, well, this is the hardest job in the refinery. And people have gotten injured and people have left the company, lost their jobs trying to do it. And I'm like, I can do it. So this is my fearlessness coming back in again. I need the money. The job is here. If anybody can do it, I can do it. So I got the job. I was a good pumper. I was a great pumper. All right. Now I go into this place. I was a football player. I'm 5'11", 190 pounds. All right. 6 months in this job, I lost 30 pounds.
Wow.
And it wasn't from anything other than just working hard. I mean, every ounce of fat that my body ever knew was gone. You know, I was nothing but lean muscle at 165 pounds, you know. So it was a tough job. So I did the job. I was a good pumper. I had already gotten my barber's license. I got that before I graduated from high school and was cutting hair off back and forth with my dad. So I decided that I wanted to stop working there as a pumper and become a barber. All right. And so I quit. I think I was at the oil refinery for a year and a half. So I'm like 20, maybe close to being 21 years old when I quit.
And your baby's born now too.
Oh yeah. Butch is born. So and we're doing all right. You know, we're learning how to be with each other and stuff like that. And it wasn't traumatic. It wasn't utopia either. You know, so we were making adjustments and stuff like that. So I quit and I started cutting hair. And it seems like within weeks from the time that I quit and started cutting hair, naturals came in the Black community. And what natural is the big fuzzy hair, you know. Well, before that, everybody had what we call collegians, where short hair with razor line here and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, nice and tight.
So the guys used to get a haircut every 2-3 weeks. Started getting a haircut every 2-3 months. So my clientele, my business went from, just to pick some numbers for a relative perspective, from $200 a week to $100 a week. My income went in half about a month after I quit the oil refinery. And I was working a lot of overtime and everything. I was cranking in the money. And I was going to have to hustle as a barber as it was. And then what happened, the naturals came in and it got cut in half. So I go back to the oil refinery and I go to the personnel manager and I said, I want my job back. I want to come back. And he said, well, we already hired a pumper. But he said, but we'll hire you back because you were a good pumper. So they hired me back immediately. I went back to the food oil refinery as a bleacher operator, which is a piece of cake job in comparison to being a pumper.
Was the money comparable or no?
Yes. So I wasn't there as a bleacher operator for 4 or 5 months before, and I was going to run for union steward too, also. They saw something in me and the way I run my mouth or something like that.
And the steward would be somebody that you're like, you're the voice of the union, and people come to you who work there.
That want to file a grievance, that had been mistreated or didn't get paid right or didn't get the position they got or was abused or...
Now, do you get money for that?
No.
Okay.
No, you just get status for that. But no, you didn't get any extra money. The union didn't pay you anything for that. So I was going to run for union steward, and I don't think this was connected to that. But before that even happened, they offered me a supervisor's job. And this was like a month or two before I turned 21. I was a pretty young guy, all right? And I had, up to this point, had never considered any kind of management position. I never thought about it. I never thought it being good nor bad. I had supervisors that I respected and supervisors that were crappy, and that's just what it was. My mindset was to hustle and make as much money as I could because I didn't have enough money. And so I took the job. They offered it to me, and I said, well, they think I can do it. I think I can do anything. So I took the job. And I was at Durkee, and I left them after about a year and a half and went to Hunt Wesson, was there for 13 years and went from supervisor to assistant plant manager. That plant closed. I went to Bungie in Kankakee, and I worked there for 10 years and went from assistant plant manager to director of total quality. And in that interim, I was a plant manager for 7 years. So my life in manufacturing management, it just sort of happened. I always did my very best, and I generally always had aspirations for that next role. But I never had any long range aspirations. Like when I was a supervisor, I never thought about being a plant manager. I just wanted to be a refinery superintendent, which was the next step up. So the bottom line is, I always the things that I did next were never scary to me. As a plant manager, I was kind of getting bored at Bungie after about 6. That's the longest I had been in one position in my life. All right. I'm working for Bungie. I've been the plant manager, and things are going good. I'm getting a nice bonus every year. And one incident sort of paved the way for a transition that I didn't see coming. We used to analyze these products in the laboratory, and with the tests that we used, there was a variation involved with every test. Like you take a sample and you run that sample 3 times, you're going to get 3 different numbers, and that's what you saw was a variation in the test method itself. Not the product is the same. So let's say you got a range this number needs to be between 7 and 10, and it came out of 6.8. Just test it again. The law of average said that once it crosses that 7 line, it's in, and we ship it. So sometimes we would test that thing 4 or 5 times. If it's really off, it ain't going to get there. But if it's close, we do that. So that was a reality that we lived in, and our sales force used to come up with these specifications, and sometimes they would make them tighter in order to use that to promote the product with the customer. We're better than our competition because our range is 9 to 10, and theirs is 7 to 11. So ours is more specific to your needs, that kind of thing. All that was bullshit. All right, so. And they would make these changes without any considerations to whether it was possible to do and how much would be rejected on the side and how much delay that would cause. They were just trying to make some money. So I found out that a person that I knew in Chattanooga in quality control was going to get fired because the plant manager and the president of the company and all found out that this was going on. That they were testing it over and over till they got the number that they wanted. And the word got out really quick. They were going to fire this. I knew this person, because sometimes we have meetings out of town, and you meet people, and it was a nice person. And so I went to the president. I said, "This is bullshit." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, "We all do this. They're afraid to tell you, but we've been doing this for years. This stuff we do this. We've been doing this. I walked in here, we were doing this. We did this at Hunt Wesson. We did it at Durkee." I said, "You can't fire this person over that." And I said, "That's bullshit," And I convinced him to change his mind and not fire this person, So that was the beginning of me starting to look at the numbers and starting looking at statistics. and variation and stuff like that. So I just on my own started understanding statistical process control and started talking to the salespeople about it so they can use that in their conversations with their customers. So I'm a plant manager teaching the sales guys about statistical process control as an advantage for them to talk to their customer and try to get their business. Pillsbury, big customer, going through the same sort of transition. So this is like in, if I had to pick a time, mid 80s, okay, 85, something like that, okay? And they starting to understand statistical process control also. They called it SPC, as a acronym or short. And they told Bungie, you can keep us as your primary customer if you come up with a position called Director of Total Quality. So the customer told our parent company, you have to come up with some, and this person needs to teach statistical process control to your managers. You can keep us as a customer. They came to me and said, we got to create a position. This is the title. This is what they said. You're the only one that talks to us about this stuff. Do you want it? And I told them, hell yeah. And I took it, and they basically said, tell us what we got to do. So I had to spend some time at Pillsbury with their people, and also, so I designed this job. Again, this is life coming to me. I didn't necessarily cause these things to occur. It's situational sometimes, but when it happens, you see something, it feels right, it, you go toward it, and if it's reinforcing, you keep going in that direction. If it's not reinforcing, you change course, and that's sort of like how my life went, and it was an interesting job, and I learned a lot, and I got canned as a director of total quality for Bungie, which is another story. But that's how my life is. I don't look at it too far out. But I do want to pay attention to what's happening now and what might happen next. But I'm not looking 8 moves down the road. Never did.
That's interesting too. Do you want to now circle back and during this time frame where you're progressing through your career, what's happening with you and Bernadette and your family life?
Oh yeah. Butch was born right away. Gina was born 3.5 years later. So we wanted to have 2 kids. We wanted to have a girl and a boy. Bernadette was a stay-at-home mom. She volunteered at the school that they went to. Butch was a strange, odd, delightful little guy. Unbelievable. He was the things that he did even as a baby blows my mind. And I've seen a lot of babies since then, and the one that's in my house, that was born in my house not too long ago, that'll be 1 year old in a month, is the closest thing to Butch that I've seen so far.
Well, I want to know, you're basically Bernadette's still a teenager. You're 20 now. When
when he was born, she was 18 when he was born. I was 19.
So how did you guys take the parenting then? Did it come easy for you, or?
Well, it was mostly her because I worked. I was gone, and so I was not. I was sort of like a traditional working father. That's what the wife does. So I didn't do many diapers and didn't feed many bottles, and she didn't breastfeed. So my job was to do what I did best, and that was make money. So we got along fine. Butch was a strange little kid. You know, he he wouldn't hardly sleep. He could hear everything. He was very transactional too. So he was like one of the stories I would tell is that at 6 months old or so, he would be crying because he wanted to be picked up. And you start walking toward the baby bed, he stopped crying. You back away, he started crying. You walk closer, he stopped. He was like, I'm telling you what to do. Do what you're told, you know, and so he was like that. So even beyond that, he he could get out of his baby bed that had the sides that slide up before he could walk. All right. He could climb out, hold on to the bars, slide down to the bottom, and drop onto his rear end with a diaper on and not injure himself. So he's doing this. He's 1 year old. Okay, he's not walking yet, but he can almost run holding to the wall, but he ain't walking. All right, and so one of the things that he did that was so amazing is that he could leave the house before he could walk. He was big enough and tall enough and strong enough and smart enough to get to the door, turn the doorknob, open the door, and fall through the door because the door has sort of like a spring mechanism on it. He would slide down the stairs. This is when we lived over Uncle George's house over there, which is on Laughlin also. I bought that house. That's another story. At any rate, he would slide down the stairs on his stomach, very controlled, get to the bottom. There was another door that was spring loaded. He would open it, fall through the door into the hallway, and then bang on Uncle George's door. And Uncle George was call us on the phone and say, he's down here again, you know, because this is something he would do. And me and Vern would be asleep. Butcher left the house. And he couldn't walk. And he also started talking before he could walk. He could, not a lot, but he could give orders like food, eat, hot dog, milk, you know. So he was just rambunctious. And when we played so much, even though I worked a lot, when I wasn't working, I played with him an awful lot. And he was so wild. And so he knew, I taught him how to ride a three-wheel bike when he was 3 years old. I remember his first day at school, I was at work. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. You know, he used to ride down to St. Raphael, which was a half a block away. That's where he was going to go to preschool. And Bern was taking him to school for the first day. And he's like, go back home, Mama, go back home. And she's in tears because she's taking her baby to school. And he's trying to say, I don't need you to take me to school. I've been up here 10 times already. I know the way, you know. So that's the kind of kid he was, you know. And Gina, my daughter, was just the reverse. She was afraid of her shadow going to school and nervous, and both of them were super smart, but she was nervous. And her story that comes to mind was she'd be all right in whatever class it was in after about 2 or 3 weeks. But the first 2 or 3 weeks, Gramps, my father-in-law, who was retired at the time, would have to go up there and sit in her class with her so she wouldn't cry until she got used to the new teacher. And this went on for first, second, third, fourth grade.
So her grandfather would go with her to the classroom?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That was funny. She gets mad when I remind her of this now. She was afraid of her shadow and holding on to her mama like glue until she turned 14. One day, 13 or 14, she went from being afraid of her shadow to being boy crazy. And like my sisters. She was like suicidal in love throughout her whole teenage life,
Yeah.
it was just weird and funny, but that's the way it was.
So with a boy and a girl, you're the dad.
Yeah.
So, and you came from, inner city. Stuff happens in inner city. Your sisters got pregnant young.
Yeah.
Are you looking at your daughter like with a little overprotectiveness?
Well, you sort of yes and yes. In terms of mannerism and potential for being reckless, she reminded me of my middle sister, Mary Louise. All right. My middle sister, Mary Louise, got killed when she was 29 years old. She was shot in the head. Prior to that, she was a drug addict and a prostitute.
Oh, her life derailed.
Oh, it derailed big time. My daughter, as a teenager and an older teenager, had boyfriends that were in that sort of territory of dealing with drugs and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And she was difficult. She was smart, accomplished. She was almost a valedictorian in her class and stuff like that. But when it came to relationships, she didn't have much sense.
Wild child.
Yes. And so at one point, she and my wife fell out over some argument or disagreement on what she could and could not be allowed to do. And let's say she's at this point 17 years old, maybe 18 years old. And Bern said, "We're putting her out." And I said, "No, we're not." He said, "Yes, we are." I said, "No, we're not. She ain't going nowhere." I said, I'll supervise. At this point, I think she was out of high school. She had a job. I had bought her a car, and but she was dealing with a boyfriend. She was working at a hotel at the desk at a hotel, and she was letting him stay there. Stupid stuff, and we found out about it, and she was getting in trouble about that. And my wife said, "She's got to go." And I'm like, "She ain't going nowhere." I said, "I'm going to watch her like a hawk. I'm going to take her car keys. I'm going to drive her to work, but she ain't going nowhere." And the reason I took such a strong stand was I lost my sister to that situation. And Bern didn't have a sense of that. She couldn't feel it the way I felt it. And it wasn't necessarily rational. It was emotional. I was not going to let my daughter get away. I didn't want. She was going to end up dead or on drugs or something. She was going down the wrong path.
And let's pause on the progression of your daughter's story and go back to your sister's death. Mm-hmm. Did she have a long period of years where she was living a high stress life, we'll call it?
Well, she got married when she was 17 or 18. She got pregnant, got married, and the marriage lasted a year or two. So her second boyfriend got her into drugs. And once she got strung out, he got her to start prostituting for her. So from the time that she was, let's say, 20 years old until she was 29, she was in and out of drug rehabs, and we tried interventions and all.
So the whole family was aware. And,
yeah. It was sad. She used to stay at my house sometimes for months on end, because she needed a place to crash. Her life had just fallen apart.
Yeah, and the reason why I wanted to take a side street with her is because it's a lot of my mom was number 9 of 10, and 8 boys and 2 girls, and she was always a wild child.
Yeah,
and she met my dad, had me when she was 19. He took off. and she never got her shit together.
Yeah.
So she wound up dead on the bathroom floor with a heroin needle in her arm too.
Wow.
So yeah, it's tragic. You know, the drugs are so powerful. Once you get addicted, like you don't have choice anymore.
And the thing is, it's less so, but similar to alcohol. Some people can handle it, some people can't. Some people can do the drugs and it don't ruin their lives. And some people can't. I know people up close and personal that they have a drink, that day is done. They're going to pass out. They're going to keep on chasing that alcohol that day until they pass out.
Right. What about your sister, child or children? What about that?
She only had one child. He's fine. He's 61, 62 years old now. Married for the second time. He's got 4 kids, and he's a decent guy.
That's awesome. That's a blessing right there.
And my parents, who
this would be your nephew we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. So my parents, who are not known for babysitting, it's just not something that they tried to do. They ended up raising little Jimmy. That's his name. That's what we called him. You know. From the time that he was maybe 7 years old till he went to the service, you know, and he lived with them because my sister was on drugs and his dad was, I don't know how to describe him, a perfectionist at to the point that it was very disruptive. He was too mean and egotistical, and things had to go his way, and it was just a miserable experience for little Jimmy. So even his dad and my parents agreed that he would be better off with little Jimmy, be better off with them. And that was good.
And that's a blessing that your parents were around.
Right.
Grandparents raising kids usually turns out pretty good.
Yeah. So
my grandparents raised me quite a bit.
Yeah. So the relationship with my daughter, and now to stay with my daughter, she got married when she was 21 or so.
We went a little fast. So you told Bernadette, she's staying, and you're gonna stay on top of her.
Yeah. So what happened was, Vern was a pretty firm-minded individual too, as you can probably guess, you know. And she left me when I said Gina couldn't go. And I told her, I said, then you do what you have to do. I'm doing what I got to do. And so Vern moved into a hotel. And when I wouldn't cave, Vern came back. And she said, okay, so how are we going to do this? You know, and we worked it through. And Gina got rid of that boyfriend, or he went to prison or something. I don't know what happened to him. He sort of like disappeared from her life. She ended up, she was like 20 or 21 years old. She was dating this guy in the neighborhood who was 18 years old in high school. And she got pregnant and they got married, you know. And he was a pretty nice kid, very immature, you know. He didn't really know what he was getting into or what he was up against. That marriage didn't last long, but 3 wonderful kids came from it, you know, TJ and the twins, you know. TJ's 32, the twins are 29.
What are their names?
Alexis and Ariana.
Is one of those the one you did the podcast with?
Yes, that's Alexis. And Alexis is the one that has the little boy that reminds me of Butch. His name is Legend.
How about that?
He's 11 months old. And as I left to come over here today, I'm talking to Lexi, trying to cover something. She's asking me about the podcast, and I'm asking her. She said, "I want to see the podcast." I said, "You never let me see the podcast. You just did." She said, "Oh no, you can't see that one." I'm like, and so she and I are going back and forth, and Legend is screaming at us. Like he's in the middle of the conversation. He's saying, yeah. He's pointing his finger.
That's hilarious.
He is so funny and so rambunctious. You know, he reminds me of Butch.
You got a lot of fire in your bloodlines, you know that?
Oh man, I'm telling you.
It all recurs with the next generations.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
Yeah. So Gina, back to Gina. She got married, and that marriage, I think they were together for maybe 7 or 8 years. But also, what happened while they were married was she went back to school and got her nursing degree, and she became a registered nurse, and that gave her a good footing and a good foundation for the years that followed, which weren't perfect by no stretch of the imagination, but the work part of it was. So she was able to at least make a decent living. She couldn't necessarily hang on to the stuff that she was getting, and she moved around a lot and stuff like that. But she worked her way through that, and her mother fell out again, and that relationship stayed fractured for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And what brought it back together was when I was working. I was 65 years old. I contracted an infection from work. That's a conclusion that I drew after the fact.
Gotcha.
And I had to have emergency spinal surgery when I was 65. I never went back to work after that. And Gina was living in Atlanta at the time, her and her 3 kids, and with some guy or something, her relationship life was always kind of jacked up. All right. But her relationship with her mother mended as I almost died. Whatever they concluded was in the way wasn't important enough to stay in the way. So they mended their relationship. They never really talked about it and fixed it. They just both kind of walked on eggshells for the rest of my wife's life, with love and regard.
Mm-hmm.
But so when my wife passed away 3 years ago, Gina, my wife was a cancer survivor, and so she came down with cancer right before COVID. That November or so, and she had to get the prognosis was radiation and then chemo. And she did the radiation. It took its toll on her.
Yeah, radiation is tough.
And but they did an evaluation with MRIs and stuff like that a month or 2 after the radiation, and they said all the signs of the cancer were gone, and she didn't need chemo. So that was a good thing. So she never had.
Yeah, help me with the timeline real quick. So this has happened before COVID.
Yeah,
But how old are you? So COVID was 2020.
Yeah,
so you're in your 70s now.
Yeah, I'm retired already.
Yeah, so you've had some years retired already.
Oh yeah.
And then before the cancer, like what would your life, a day in the life be with you guys now?
Fine. So my life. Let's say right before I retired. Oh, right before I retired, I was 65 years old. I was sort of in my second career. I'm now no longer in the food oil industry. I'm a product specialist working for an orthopedic house, and I'm hustling because that's what I know how to do. So I'm back up into the low 6 figures again. It took me a while to crawl back up into that spot, and so that's where I'm at. So whatever I accumulated over the years was like gone. So my plan was to work till I was 70 and use my Social Security as the amount that I was going to be saving. You know, I can make $100,000 a year, and I can save my 40,000 Social Security,
Yeah.
and in 5 years I'll have $250,000, and I'll be okay. And my Social Security would be maxed out, and every life would be good. So that was the plan. It was the only plan I could come up with under the circumstances. But life was decent. So when I contracted this infection and I had to stop working, I went from $100,000 a year to $40,000, $45,000 a year because I couldn't work. And my son helped me because I had bills. I had to downsize in a hurry. I had the house that I'm in now then, you know. And so I was able to squeeze through and get by, you know. But that was it was a challenge, but we got through it together, and we were fine. We, you know, we pared down. We ate right. We didn't go anywhere. We kept the car running. You know, all that kind of stuff. And Butch helped me out for about 1.5 years, and I paid him back when I got a settlement from my job after I had to leave work early with that work related.
How long did that take, the settlement? That stuff usually takes too long.
1.5 years.
1.5, okay.
Yeah, easy 1.5 years, maybe 2. So I owed Butch probably $15,000, and as soon as I got my settlement, I had to give him that back. He paid my car note. You know, it was a $700 car note. He paid that car note for that whole duration. It wasn't pretty, but it was.
Yeah,
was okay.
I just was curious because we skipped over that part. So now she did the radiation, and then the MRIs are showing that she's making progress, right?
Yeah, well, they said the tumor that they saw was gone, and they said that we'll just have to monitor it, but you don't need to do the chemo, and so she didn't. But the radiation beat her up. You know, it basically took her from the role of being out and about to being a homebody. She didn't even want to go to the store. You know, she didn't want to be away from the bathroom. You know, it wasn't pretty. You know, so those 4 years, the next 4 years were she was a couch potato. She wasn't going nowhere. I did all the cooking. One of the things that kept her going and kept her inspired was my first great-grandchild was born. And we ended up being the primary babysitters for her. She's now 6 years old, be 7 in July. And she lives down in Houston, and she still calls me on her iPad.
I seen a couple of those calls in the ping pong room.
Yeah. So she's a sweetie pie. She was the lifeblood for Bern to just stay motivated enough to want to face the next day. You know, and I did most of the diaper work and the feeding and the cooking and the cleaning and the stuff like that. But I was retired, so hey, what you got to do? You do what you got to do.
Right.
You know, it didn't feel like a burden at all. It was, you know, she was the woman that I loved. She was the woman that I'd been with for over 50 years, you know. And like I said, it wasn't all perfect, but 99% of the time it was. We probably wasted 60 days out of 55 years.
And by waste, you mean that you guys didn't manage those days correctly, right?
Where we didn't talk to each other.
Yeah.
Or slept in a different room or stuff like that. Or the 2 weeks that she was moved to the hotel because of the Gina thing, you know, that. So we lost a couple of months out of 55 years, you know. I call that a big success.
Yeah, too.
When the cancer came back in 23, it was in 23. When the cancer came back, we knew it was serious, and it was different because she had been having to go back to the hospital for these so what they call the UTIs, urinary tract infections. She probably every 6 months or so she'd have to go back again and had to get the liquid antibiotics to knock it down.
Was it a product of her age or compromised immune system from radiation.
Compromised immune system from the radiation.
Okay, gotcha.
You know, it burned her in places that never saw the light of day, and so it never really healed. You know, so it left it a bad situation for her that she had to deal with from the time that she got the radiation treatment. So the last time that she went to Englewood Hospital in early 23,
In Naperville?
yes, in March of that 23, this time was different. You know, she was in and out of consciousness, which would never happen before. I took her to the hospital. You know, I'd taken her all the other times. I think the first time we went in the ambulance because she was hard-headed and waited until she couldn't walk before she had to go. But the subsequent UTI infection, we knew the signs, we knew the signals. Gina was on the phone. Gina's a nurse. Gina said, "Mama, get in the car. It's time. You know the signals. Let's go." You know, if you don't go with Dad now, they're going to call you an ambulance in 6 hours. You know that. And so that's how we would do this. And so that's how she got there last time. But this one was different. And while she was there, they decided to do scans. And I don't know what kind of scans they did, but they said the cancer was pervasive. It was back. It was everywhere. And so I was trying to talk to Gina on the phone. And you know, I was at the hospital for several hours, and I came home to get some rest and clean up and stuff like that. And the next time I talked to Gina to give her an update, Gina said, "Hang on, I want you to talk to somebody." And I'm like, "Who?" And then she handed the phone, and it was Bern. So Gina had flew up from Tennessee, and she was at Edward Hospital. You know, but she too also knew this was different. This was serious. And Gina didn't go home for 2 weeks, and she stayed with me till Bern closed her eyes. And Bern and I had talked about this situation, so it was not like a surprise. She had said that if this cancer comes back, I'm not doing any Herculean stuff. I'm not. She said, I'm shutting it down. She said, I'm gonna do just like Granddad. And Granddad, she's talking about my father. At 92, when he was done, he said, I'm through. Now, he didn't eat or drink again, and 10, 11 days later, he was dead. And Bern did the same thing. She shut it down. She said, I'm leaving. I'm through. I've gone through 4 years of hell being a couch potato. I can do that, but I'm not doing surgeries. I'm not doing chemo. I'm not. And they were talking about putting something down her throat to feed her that way, and she said, "Nope, nothing." And so we brought her home, and Gina and I, and with the supervision of a hospice organization and nurses that came by every 6 or 8 hours or so, we stayed with her, and she died after being at home for about 10 days. So Gina was there with me through it all. And so Gina, being a registered nurse, was also for years part of my retirement plan because my income and savings got blown up because of the circumstances that I had gone through. And I cut a deal with Gina 12, 15 years ago that when we call you, wherever you are, you're moving up here to take care of us. And if you do that, you get the house. So that's the deal we cut, you know. And Gina was always a successful nurse. She was working at home. She still works from home, you know, and she makes a really good living. So when Bern passed away, I told Gina, go home and get Kevin and move in now. There's no reason to
Kevin's
wait.
her husband.
Yes.
Cheesecake, I call him.
Yeah, cheesecake. Yeah, cheesecake. And he's been fabulous too. Before that happened, Alexis was already living with us. My granddaughter, Gina's one of the twins, and she was already living with us. When Vern passed away, she was living with us there. And she's moved out, and then she moved back, and she just moved out again.
What's the deal with her? She's just in between things, schools, things like that?
She's a lot like her mother. She's very smart. She reads a lot. She's getting a master's degree.
Awesome.
She's not currently working because she's got that baby, and we want her to finish his school. And
yeah, no, I love it.
And and we want her to get her life together. So, that's her situation now. So Gina came back with Kevin. Gina's a fabulous cook, and so I just love her being in my space, and her and Kevin and TJ, my grandson, being there puts me in a situation where financially I'm not strapped. Prior to that, I could get by, but I couldn't get ahead. I couldn't accumulate or amass any money. I couldn't go on a vacation. I couldn't do anything. But with them being with me and paying the kind of expenses that they have to pay to be anywhere, even at a discounted rate, it's all money in my pocket that allows me to do things that I couldn't ordinarily do. So that's a situation that opened up the possibility of having another relationship, which I didn't understand was going to happen either.
Yeah, and before we get to that, because we have a lot to talk about there, but my wife died on the airplane touching down to the cancer center. She died in my arms.
Wow.
And then, so there's a component, at least for me, of loneliness where you're used to the noises they make throughout the day, their little rituals, the watching TV in the evening time, and then all that stuff, it all just disappears like that.
Right.
And it leaves a hollow space.
Yes.
It left a hollow space in me. And I have two sons still living here with me, but that time that was our time, it's not there anymore. And it's kind of brutal.
It is. And I was kind of fortunate because a couple of things happened that caused the situation that transpired. I started doing airport runs. Late 22, somewhere in there.
Shuttling people to and from airport, right?
It just happened as a opportunity. I saw a note on the bulletin board, and I called the number, and they said, I need a ride. And I said, yeah, I'll do it. And I said, pass it on that if I did a good job. And so I've been doing that since then. And it's not, I might spend 6 hours a week doing it. It doesn't take a lot of time. An old friend of mine was turned out to be a new airport ride customer, and she also knew Bern because I've been on a new land 40 years ago. She was working for me when I worked at Bungie, and so very shortly after Bern passed away, within a week, 2 weeks or something like that, I was supposed to see Lynn, either take her to an airport or something like that. And then that's when I told her about it. I didn't tell her before then that Bern had passed away. And, we cried briefly for a minute.
And you've known this lady for 40 decades.
40 years, easy, and her husband had died 10 years earlier, 10 years ago. Or 13 years ago about now. She was a friend for me to help fill the spaces that were created by this disappearance of Bern. The thing that you referenced, the TV time, that 2, 3, 4 hours a day that belonged to the two of us. And it was therapeutic. Almost like a therapist kind of assistance. It allowed me to vent and talk and things of that nature. And so Gina being there was allowing the house to be taken care of and for me to be fed, and Kevin was there for me to play ping pong with. So all of this was a healing sort of experience for me. And it didn't take me 3 months or so to realize that I'm not dead yet. That I want to live. That I want to do stuff that maybe I didn't do. That I wasn't even too conscious of the fact that I wasn't doing it. I think in 55 years I went on vacation twice. That's it. Because Bern didn't like to go. And it was not an issue because I went enough places anyway with work that I didn't really want to go. But that was the situation that now I'm like, okay, so I'm healthy. I can do this. I'm still alive. I'm still active. I want to see stuff I hadn't seen. I want to do stuff maybe I hadn't done.
Are you thinking about, are you better off with a significant other? Did that come into play? Because for me, it happened right away. Like, I've been with my wife for 40 years and she passed away. And I'm like, I've had a significant other since I was a teenager. I always had one girlfriend. And so I just had to wonder, I go, am I better off with a significant other or not? Like, I asked myself that question almost right away.
I didn't ask myself that question. Why? Well, let's define what we mean by significant other too, because what I realized pretty early on was that I wanted a relationship, a monogamous, dedicated relationship. I wanted that. I realized that after about 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
After my wife passed away, that I wanted that.
That's what I was getting at too.
Yeah. So, absolutely. I realized that I wanted that. The idea of getting married is a different thing.
True.
Altogether, it's an expansion from that, but it's not the same, you know. But I'm doing that, and that's an interesting story too. The other thing that happened to me over the course of my life was that I joined the Catholic Church. My wife, Bern, was baptized Catholic when she was a baby. My kids were baptized Catholic when they were babies. My kids went to Catholic school. I was in the Protestant church. I quit the church when I was 13 or 14 years old. I wasn't a religious person. My life was going pretty good. At 35 or 36 years old, I'm a plant manager in Bungie Foods in Kankakee. From very meager beginnings, I'm making 6 figures. I got a nice house. I'm thankful. I decided to join the church, almost as a sort of a sign of appreciation. I never, throughout that whole process of becoming Catholic, felt inspired by the Bible or the word of the Lord or the promise of heaven or things of that nature. It was more a way of communing with other human beings in a helpful way, in a spirit of love and giving and thanksgiving. So I went toward church with that in mind. I left church, I don't know how many years after that, 5 or 6 years after that, because of some priest doing some jealous sort of god-awful things that pissed me off. I don't blame God or Jesus for that. I blame him for that. But both Vernon and I left the church. And that's also when I kind of started on my spiritual journey of reflecting and reading and stuff of that nature. I think Bern bought me a book. Bern was interesting in this way. She did so many things that were really, really instrumental for me that she didn't even understand. Like she bought me this book that was written by Tim Allen, the tool guy.
The comedian, yeah.
Yeah, the comedian. And the name of the book is called "I'm Not Really Here." And it's sort of a comedic rendition of quantum physics and reality. And it had references in the back, and I enjoyed the book so much. I just followed the trail and found other books, and I probably since have maybe read 50 different books in that same vein of spirituality and quantum physics, how they merge and complement each other and stuff like that. So when I left the church, I started down this path, and this path has been significant for me in keeping me grounded and satisfied and okay. And that's where I'm at.
Hmm.
And I'm still going down that path, you know.
Yeah, well, we've gotten into a lot of discussions.
Yeah.
I call these red pill moments where something you were taught that you firmly believed would be truth, and you find out if you are a truth seeker, you ask a lot of questions. You've been asking a lot of questions since you were a little boy, so
right.
you're wired to be a truth seeker, and you're going to obtain a lot more data than the average person because you want to know. I want to know. This doesn't seem right to me. You said that about what happened to you in church, right? You're like, fire and brimstone, and it didn't make sense to you, and you put it through the processor over and over again, and then so the double-edged sword of being a truth seeker is you keep your mind as open as possible to all information, and you don't shut anything out because that other thing could be right.
That's true. That's true. And one of the things that I'm learning, the smarter I get, the more I realize I don't know. You know what I mean?
That's wisdom, though, right?
You see what I mean? So one of the things that I'm gaining, particularly in these later years, is that I can have a relationship and of value with people that I don't agree with on a lot of things. A lot of people don't get that, you know, especially in this sort of divided environment that we live in of politics. You know, you're either a Trumper or you're not a Trumper kind of thing, and family members don't talk to each other because they disagree.
I've been there too.
You know, so I'm of the mindset now, and that probably couldn't have been there 10 or 15 years ago, that there's value in maintaining open relationships with people that you don't agree with on everything. You know, because, you know, my fiance and I, we don't agree on everything, and that's of value to us. Now, that doesn't necessarily make everything smooth and easy and comfortable, but smooth and easy and comfortable, it's not necessarily that helpful. You know, like,
correct.
Like if I can find let's say a possible mate or a relationship with someone who's just like me, and we'll get along fine, but we'll have the same blind spots. You see what I mean? We'll have the same weaknesses. But if I have a relationship with someone who has value that's different from me, it broadens my capabilities.
Yes.
You know, so that's why it's so important to have people in your life that you don't agree with 100%.
Yes, and see, this is what you're talking about is wisdom.
Yeah.
And to have wisdom, I asked my friend this. I said, I know one thing I've been good at my whole life, better than average, let's say, is pattern recognition.
Yeah.
I'm paying attention to a lot of data, and I'm like, then you start to see patterns. Well, to see patterns, you have to be looking at a lot of data and then wanting to see the pattern. And I asked him, what part of wisdom is pattern recognition? And this, my friend who's smarter than me, he said, almost everything.
Yes.
Meaning wisdom is largely pattern recognition.
I agree with him.
Yeah, you and I are kind of on a similar journey to enlightenment. Here's what I've learned, and I call it internal mastery.
Mhm.
And it's mastery of oneself.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
And to have mastery of oneself, you have to be aware of what you're thinking and feeling.
Right.
It's like you're paying attention to yourself, and they
Right.
call that metacognition and neuroscience,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So, and then once you start paying attention to your own patterns,
Yes.
right, and you start to realize that certain patterns are not leading me to live my best life right now, and certain patterns are, right? So, what I've learned is that having emotional mastery is the key. It doesn't mean elimination of emotions. It means putting the emotions where they need to be and in the proper level, right?
Sure.
So, anger is one that can screw your day up.
Sure.
Fear is really bad, right? And we talked about fear a bunch of times. You said fearless. You possess a calmness in you,
Right.
and that I believe you're probably born with a little bit of that wiring, but then your processor, you've been living and learning at a higher level, right?
I think so.
You're not a good problem solver when you're angry. That's what I learned.
Oh, no. Anger doesn't serve me well. I've been angry not even a half a dozen times in my life where I regret how I behaved. Maybe 4 or 5 times in my entire life. It didn't serve me well. Yeah, I have no use for it. It's not good for me. Worry is not good for me. It's never.
Worry is terrible.
It's a waste of time.
It's actually sinful, right? In the Bible.
Yeah.
You know what the most repeated phrase in the Bible is? And this is right what we're talking about?
What?
Do not fear.
Fear not. Right.
So I have to backtrack you on this because you have a wealth of knowledge that I don't. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about racism, and we could take it wherever we want to go.
Okay.
You had mentioned you had a brick thrown in your window when you lived in Beverly.
Yes.
Do you think that was a racist brick through your window, do you think, or was that just a random thing?
I don't know.
Okay, well, that's
and so let me say more about that though. In the vein of racism, my radar for picking up on racism doesn't work.
What do you mean? You're not good at it?
And I don't want to be good at it.
That's interesting.
I don't want to be good at it. I've known people that would say to me, "Did you see the way they looked at you?" And I'm like, I don't give a damn how they looked at me.
Mm-hmm.
I got a life to live. I have stuff to do, and if nothing is in my way, I don't care what they think and how they behave. If they work with me or for me or something like that, they're gonna have to do their job. That's all that's required. I don't give a damn if they like me or if they're racist or they're. Well, how could that even matter? That's on them. They ain't on me.
So let me ask you the question then: by you having that reaction. That I don't give a F how they look at me?
Yeah.
Have you contributed to the elimination of racism by choosing that perspective?
I don't know. Perhaps, but I don't know.
I'm just like Morgan Freeman. They asked him, if you ever saw the interview.
I don't know.
How do we stop racism? He goes, stop talking about it.
Yeah, leave it alone.
Right? So I don't care how somebody's looking at me. You've actually eliminated, even if that person was looking at you with or some kind of racist twinge, you not acknowledging it, eliminated that. That's gone.
Same individual, same kind of circumstances can even say something that's disrespectful. Let's throw that in. I still don't have to wrap that in racism. Why do I need to do that?
Mm-hmm.
How does that serve me and what it is I'm trying to accomplish? You know, if you're disrespectful and I don't like it, I'm going to address it. I'm not even going to think in terms, if you're white and I'm black, I'm not going to think in terms of you doing it because I'm black. What's that got to do with anything? Can you disrespect a white person? Sure you can. So if you disrespect me, why would I want to assume that you're doing it because I'm black? Maybe you're doing it because you're jealous. Maybe you're doing it because you hate me, or I remind you of somebody that.
And that's brilliant because you can make anything. You can make any action disrespectful,
Sure.
and you can make any action racist, right?
Yeah,
It's our perception.
Yeah.
To me, racism is passing judgment, right?
Yeah.
It's just like when we make excuses for ourselves by calling somebody something.
Sure.
You're privileged, you're this. And I write about privilege in my book, okay? And here's what I say about privilege, whether you call it white privilege or just privilege. We have people who are privileged above us and people who are we are privileged above. Everybody. So we're all in some kind of rank and file.
That's just the way it is.
When I was on the trading floor, there were two brothers who worked in the pit. They were from a wealthy, white privileged family, if you will. They each had 7-figure trust funds given to them by their father.
Sure.
Okay. They went to Ivy League schools, Notre Dame. They were super smart. They were the nicest guys you could ever imagine.
Sure.
And some of the guys in pit would call them trust fund babies. And they passed judgment on them because they had a lot of money that was given to them. And I'm like, I was, one, happy for them. And number two, they never treated me badly. And number three, their privilege has nothing to do with me.
Right.
My life is mine. That has nothing to do with me.
And I'll take off from there. Everybody's life is at a certain spot or place or level, certain environmental conditions, and it only changes from that location. And so where other people are don't matter. You're only going forward from here. So find out what's going to be good for you for that, and leave all that other shit alone.
Yeah, I love that.
It has no value. To dislike somebody else or to judge them or to categorize them is a total flat out waste of time. You might as well be worrying about something else ridiculous. It doesn't matter. It ain't helpful.
This is my book, How to Be a Warrior of Light in a Dark World. It's available on Amazon. It's about mindset and many other things. It's kind of a handbook on life. I have my second book coming called The Gift of Grief. That's at the editor right now, and that will be published probably within a month or two. So thank you all for joining the Warrior Podcast. Thank you to our sponsors. We'll see you at our next show. And then so I'm going to rely on one of my things, and this goes back to something you said many times to me. I have a chapter in my book called Racism, and I start out by saying, I'm an old white guy. I don't know how it is to walk in this country as a black person. So I'm not going there because it'd be ignorant to do so. However, all I'm saying is whoever you are, wherever you are in this country, you can choose to be have a victim mentality or a victor mentality. And if you choose the victor mentality, then it's go time. Are you better served complaining about unfairness, even if it's there?
Even if it's there, it doesn't help.
Right. And then you used to tell me many times, just because I can do it doesn't mean everybody can do it.
That's absolutely true. Right.
So
right.
I agree with that.
And people within a race can treat each other unfairly for the same reasons of categorizing them, labeling them, judging them, and thinking less of them because of their wherever they are in their evolution of moving forward. Everybody's in a different spot. Everybody, and people in my family are the variation in my family is as wild as the variation in the world almost.
That's crazy.
And then I got to meet them where they are and see if I can be a factor that's helpful. I ain't trying to save the world. I ain't trying to change their lives and turn it upside down. And that's way too much expectation. I'd rather just be consistently behaving in a way that's non-judgmental, non-threatening, and possibly helpful. It don't even have to be major. I don't even try to be major. I can only mind being invisible. I don't even mind being an invisible resource, one that gets no credit and no recognition. I don't need credit and recognition. My life is already good. I don't need people liking me, appreciating me, saying nice things about me. I mean, if it happens, it's fine. But I'm perfectly okay not being noticed.
I never forgot the saying, there used to be a bowler named Dick Weber, but way back in the day. He's a Hall of Famer. He would be like a Jack Nicklaus figure to golf. He would be to bowling. Okay, well, Dick Weber had a son, and Dick Weber was well groomed, and he threw the ball nice and smooth, and he was well dressed. Well, his son became a professional bowler, and for a while, he was the best bowler, and he was tattooed, and he was the bad boy of bowling, and every interview he was so sassy, right? So they asked him, aren't you worried about your image and how displeasing it is to the bowling community? And he goes, I'm not here to please anybody else. I'm here to please myself. And that's a lot harder to do, meaning he's standard, right?
Sure, yeah.
So to me, whatever our code is, and I believe the creator gave me a higher sense of code, as long as I'm adhering to the code or trying to adhere to my code, life is good.
One of the things that I wanted to say today is that, to me, this whole life experience is a classroom. My probably highest priority is to learn from the experiences that I encounter. And move to a better, higher space from there. And I'm not talking about earth-shattering transformations and stuff like that. I'm just talking about trajectory and progress. But I'm here to experience things. I don't really know what I'm going to experience next. I know some things I'm going to cause, where I'm going to eat and stuff like that, and live and stuff like that. But I'm going to be very, very conscious to the encounters that are surprising, because the surprising ones, doesn't matter whether they're difficult or not. Challenges are actually extremely wonderful opportunities to learn. Very few important, wonderful lessons to learn from nice things going on. It's usually the other way around. It's a challenge that you worked your way through, and you weren't sure you were going to be able to survive it, and you had to do some investigating, and there was some uncertainty involved, and stuff like that. Important, groundbreaking, foundational lessons aren't learned from warm, fuzzy experiences.
And see, that's wisdom as well. I tell people when they come to me for help or perspective, I go, you know what you learn when things go perfectly?
Very little.
I always say nothing. Right? So the problems, that those are opportunities.
That's what they are.
And I'll share this with you. Dorothy's thing happened real fast with cancer. And so she was getting weaker by the day, and the plans were made to fly to San Diego to the cancer center. Okay. And this is what one of my warrior brothers told me. He said, he says, you are a warrior. You've been through a lot of battles, and you do pay attention to everything that happens around you. He goes, but this is a whole new thing. And he goes, be very present in the moment and pay attention, because this is a whole new set of problems, is a whole new battlefield.
Yeah.
And that whole, that 4.5 hour flight, so many little things happen with people kind of intervening. It was like,
Really?
The best of humanity that I've ever seen happen in this 4.5 hours.
Wow.
But because he told me that, I was very conscious of paying attention to every little detail. Yeah. And boy, that was a learning dump for me. You know what I mean?
True.
So, so yeah, I agree with that. So I'd like to ask this question. So if we're on this path to enlightenment, and we're trying to live and learn and enjoy and make the best of the minutes of our lives. Yeah. So I asked this question on a scale 1 to 10, 10 being the best. How happy and fulfilled are you?
Oh, man. 10.5.
That's a perfect answer.
At least a 10.5. I can't remember being happier.
That's awesome.
And that's not a negative for my past by no stretch of the imagination. It's just a statement of how much I appreciate being alive.
Yeah. Amen. And that's the expanding wisdom that we search I'm a 10 out of 10 always too.
Yeah, no, this is wonderful. I some people wonder, say, why is a guy 78 years old getting married? And I'm like, well, because there's no reason not to. There's nothing getting in the way. One of the least wonderful times of my wonderful life is when I'm not around Pat. You know what I mean? It's when I'm not around her and I'm not busy doing stuff that I like to do. I miss her tremendously. I want to be with her and she wants to be with me. And why would we not be together? And our code of ethics, which are identical, is that we ain't shacking up. If our code of ethics weren't that, we would be together already. But that's not where we are.
Mhm.
So, and why not? She told me, which is funny. I have a way of being, I guess, that
An understatement.
Yeah, I have a way of being that if I don't hear the answer I want, I don't remember the answer. That's just, and the only reason I know this is because Pat will tell me, all right, so she said, you asked me 4 times to marry you. I said, no, I didn't. She said, you did. I said, that's insane. I said, I only asked you the 1 time. She said, no, you asked me 4 times. I said, I didn't ask you 4 times. She said, you did. And I told you no, and I gave you good reasons. I said, well, then you were bullshitting me then.
Yeah. You didn't mean those answers.
And literally, I'm telling you, Frank, I don't remember asking her 3 other times. I really don't, because it wasn't the answer I wanted.
You know what part of that is, though? That's shutting out things that don't serve you. Like, you don't hold on to bad stuff.
No.
You let that go and you forget about it, right?
I literally forget about it. I mean, it's so gone. The wrong answer is not helpful. What am I gonna do with that? And so that's where I'm at. So I'm grooving. And it has to do not only with Pat, because Pat, she is so fabulous. She's so unlike me.
You're fabulous, though. Don't shortchange yourself.
Well, I'm not talking. She is unlike me still. And not in the fabulous category, but she's done so many things I haven't done. And I love that.
Yeah, she's way more worldly than you, meaning being around the world too, right?
Being around the world, and she has resources. I don't need a damn thing from her other than her time and her love and her attention. But we gonna have a wonderful life. We gonna go places. We gonna dance. We gonna groove. We gonna laugh.
That's awesome.
We watch the Oscars on TV. We go to the show. I'm line dancing. I'm learning how to golf. I'm bowling again. And we, like I said, we're not twins. We're not identical. Her faith is different from mine. I clearly believe in God, but I don't believe in heaven and hell.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what reincarnation is or what it means, and thinking about it doesn't actually add any value to my life right now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what am I going to do when I die? Well, I'll find out later. When I'm dead, that's when I'll find out. But everything has to have a translation or an impact in what's going on in my life right now. Everything that I learned on my spiritual journey is not about what's happening that created the universe and all that kind of stuff. It's really not that. It's like, what? So what has that got to do with what's going on now in your life? And if it has nothing to do with what's going on now in my life, it's a waste. It's not. It could be entertaining, but it ain't. It's not adding. And I'd rather deal with something that's adding to what's happening now.
Yeah, and again, that's wisdom.
Yeah.
And I had a little epiphany. I have a lot of them, but I was getting a little too charged about politics.
Oh yeah.
And I was trying to stay neutral, but still, I was moving away from enlightenment.
Yes.
So trying to open up people's minds about the politics of the world and stuff. it's a way to me, it's a waste of time.
You've had an impact on me of reading your book and also talking to you. Sort of developed. Now I'm gonna give you the credit or the blame for it.
Okay, I'll take them both.
To be cynical about everything that I'm exposed to from the news perspective. Everybody is exclaiming the most profound, prolific, dynamic perspective on this, that, and the other. Everybody is they want you absorbed, they want you listening, they want you looking, they want you reading, they want you nodding, they want you agreeing. The whole array is full of headlines exclaiming proclamations of dynamic, firing hell, brimstone, top of the line. No one says, this is a slow news day. There's not much going on, so just go ahead and enjoy yourself and relax. Everybody said, no. I got the goods. I'm going to tell you about what's happening with the economy. I'm going to tell you what's happening in Iran. I'm going to tell you what's happening in the House of Representatives. I'm going to tell you what's happening with J.B. Pritzker. I'm going to tell you what's happening with Donald Trump. I'm going to tell you what's happening with Jeffrey Epstein, the latest on this, the best on that, the worst on this. I'm sick of it.
Yeah.
And I still sort of stay informed, but I take everything with an ounce of skepticism and a grain of salt.
And the thing is, if you're really analytical, which you are, how do we know anything of it, what they're telling us is true? How do we know that bombs were dropped here and this was done there? And even with Ukraine and Russia, we could say, oh, well, we have the videos. That's thousands of miles away. We don't know what's going on there either. So
every time we think we know, we're choosing sides. That's all we're doing is choosing sides because, and you, much more than me, will gather facts. But even with the facts that you gather, there's a possibility that you're wrong.
100%.
You see
I've been wrong more than I've been right in my life. I'll tell you that for sure.
So having a lot of data and having put in the time to investigate it still isn't assurance that you're
correct.
Right. Here's the other thing that I've learned. And listen to one of the guys, I can't think of his name right now. He says, truth is difficult to convey. It's not necessarily attractive. It's not necessarily easy to understand. Lies are easy. You don't even need any resources to create the lying story. You just create it. It needs to have dynamism and attractiveness and kazam and outrageousness. That's all. It needs to be attractive. It don't need to be investigated. But the truth sometimes is boring.
So I'll tell you a little bit about neuroscience, and this is why it's hard to be a good trader, to trade the markets, okay? All of us, every person born onto this planet, we have a wire in us. We don't like to be wrong. Human beings do not like to be wrong, right? So to that end, a lot of times we get entrenched in our opinion, and then we don't want to be wrong, so we don't listen to any counterpoints to our opinion. We get on a podium and we staunchly hold strong with our opinion because it's uncomfortable to say, oh, I was wrong, or oh, I screwed that up, or oh, I'm sorry. It's very hard for us to do that. So in trading, when you're trading the markets, okay, and you put a trade on and the trade goes your way right away, okay, you're making money on it, you have a tendency to want to get out quickly to prove you were right.
Yes.
Right? But then if the trade goes the other way and you start losing on the trade, you hold on to it in the hopes that the market will turn and you'll be right. So because of our weak human nature, we hold on to the losers way too long and we get out of the winners way too early.
That's absolutely true.
And that's why it's hard to be a good trader. And then you and I are here acknowledging that we don't know more than we know.
Right.
And you just said it. You could do all the research in the world and pick up
every wrong.
Yeah. So to me, I say the strongest opinions that I have, I always attach the trailer, but I could be wrong.
Right.
And that keeps my mind open to listen to other things.
The other thing that like I said, the wiser I get, the more I realize I don't know. One of the things I'm becoming a whole lot more comfortable with as I progress is uncertainty. You know, that I don't run the world. I don't know what's going to happen next. All I can do is be me, do me, be the best version myself I can be, and shit's going to happen the way it happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's difficult, it's an opportunity to learn something. And I'm going with the flow. And I know for a fact that optimism is my friend, and pessimism will wear my ass out.
Yep.
You know. So I'm going forward. I'm going to be feeling good. I'm going to be looking nice. I'm going to be laughing and having fun.
And we all have the ability to do that.
Yes.
We have to let go of our opinionated selves. Yeah. And I wanted to share this with you because you already touched on this about who you surround yourself with. There's an intellect. His name is Schmachtenberger. Sounds like Schwarzenegger. He's super smart. He's got his own website, and I've listened to him speak, and I have to pause it, and I have to look words up because he's that smart. And here's what he said. He said, if you hang around with people that are only like-minded with you, he said, your opinions will get stronger, but you won't get any smarter.
You're absolutely right.
But if you surround yourself with people that are smart, that have a different opinion, your opinions won't be so strong, but you'll get a lot smarter.
And that's the same point I was making about having Pat in my life, and we're not the same. You know, the more different we are and tolerant of that difference, the broader our skills are together. You know, if it'll be easy to be with somebody who's just like me, but we'll have the same blind spots and weaknesses. And that ain't going to serve either one of us. We have fun, but we'll still hit the wall at the same time.
Yep. And it is the couples that play together do stay together. And if you have differences of opinion on something, let's say politics or whatever, it's not even important. Who cares?
It doesn't matter. I have friends who let's say they're non-Trumpers. They won't be a friend with a Trumper. They just they say, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, why can't you? That makes no sense to me. You know, the people who support where he's coming from are not 100% like him. They still have value in other areas that I could gain from if I have them in my space. And I'm able to encounter and interact with them. We don't have to talk about politics.
Yep. And so that was part of my epiphany with politics.
Yeah.
I did lose friends over, and I'm not a Trumper, but I voted for him.
Yeah, sure.
And I would never fly a Trump flag or wear a Trump hat or shirt.
Yeah.
I voted for him for my own particular reasons, which I don't know anybody who has the same reasoning as me.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was having what I thought were spirited discussions with my friends, and they're gone now.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, would I rather have those friends in my life or not in my life? And the answer was, in my life.
Yeah.
So now I said, could I have controlled that outcome? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Don't fucking talk about politics.
Right.
It's not that important. Right. Your friendship's more important to me than having a debate about tariffs. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let's take you and I, for instance. Even though I sense that there's a tolerance in you for talking with people that you don't absolutely agree with, I don't want to talk politics with you. I don't.
There's no reason.
You know what I mean? Because wherever you are, I can't change your position. People don't like to change their position. People don't like to be wrong, like you said, as a traitor, you know. So why would, even I know you have a tolerant spirit and a broad perspective, I don't want to talk politics with you. I really don't. I only want to talk politics with the people that agree with me.
But see, with me, you can change my mind.
Yeah.
If you come, with an unemotional, like, Frank, here's why I believe what I believe, and you state you bring your receipts.
Yeah.
Those are the discussions I like.
Yeah.
I may or may not change. There's one thing you can't change my mind on, and it's my most strongest bias.
Right.
And every time I challenge this bias, I still hold on to it tightly, and that is this.
Right.
Man has great potential to do evil.
Yeah.
And that evil is running the world. You're not going to convince me otherwise. God's not running the world. Satan's running the world, if you believe in that. The most powerful people in the world are the most evil people in the world because they don't have any limitation. If a man's willing to come into a household and rape and kill children, he's got a lot more weapons than I do. He has surpassed my moral code.
Right.
That guy is going to have more weapons than I do.
Yeah.
And that's why I believe the power structure of the world is the way it is. Nobody's going to ever convince me that the people at the top are looking out for the best interests. So that's the only thing that I can't be talked out of.
My perspective isn't exactly like that, but I agree with you in a great regard that having that much power, it makes it difficult to be giving and open-minded and appreciative. At least that's all we've seen so far.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen that guy that that's wonderful and he's a filthy rich billionaire. I haven't met that guy. I don't know. Even the ones that pretend to be that way have a more darker, sinister side of getting more and not letting others do better than them. You know, that's just the nature. But with all that being the case, where you and I might be different is I'm still optimistic that the human race is going to figure out a way to continue to progress, even in the midst of the circumstance that you just described. That progress is still going to occur. Because I can't change that part of me and believe in that. That's my optimism living in me. I will not be a pessimist. I will not accept the fact that we're going to hell in a handbasket, that evil will prevail. I'm not buying that.
So I'm in half agreement with you, and here's why.
Right.
The big picture, we're toast. The big picture, humanity isn't going to shift. The world isn't going to shift into the light. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean that good things don't happen within the darkness.
Right.
Like this right here.
Yes.
This is a pushback against that. And there's always going to be good people getting together, forming communities. But in the end of days, it's going to be the end of days for all of us.
And let's assume for a second that that both of us are right. That humanity, because the powerful are corrupt, is not going to go to a greater place. But there are individuals and circumstances and pockets of people that are doing the right stuff. And if reality, it goes beyond humanity, and I kind of believe it does. I can't define it. Can't describe it, but I'm assuming that humanity is a speck of dust in the larger scheme of things. So that doesn't change the fact that in this environment, in this school of life that we're going through, there's going to be some graduations. There's going to be some people that get out and move on. I don't give a damn about these rich people that don't make it. You know, I don't really care. You know, I want to do what I'm going to do. I want to do something for the people that I know, the people that I touch, the people that I can see and talk to and impact, and the hell with everybody else. Let them do what they do.
I'm with you wholeheartedly. Yeah. And I wrote this down, and I want to just come back to it. You said like life is like a classroom.
Yeah.
Right? So I wrote this in my journal when I was a teenager.
Really?
Life is like a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are sitting in the back and they're sleeping. They're on the desk sleeping.
Yes.
Some people are staring at the clock, twiddling their thumbs. Some people are doodling.
Right.
Some people are moderately paying attention and they're passing. Mm-hmm. Some people are very studious and they're sitting in the front row and they're getting A's.
Yes.
But then there's some people that they're mastering the material and they're thinking, there's something even beyond this they're teaching me. Like that would be like an Einstein or a Tesla, right? So we're all living, but we're all not learning
That's
right?
true. That's true. And my perspective is so in whatever circumstances. So how can this encounter serve me going forward? How can it be of value to me, even if it's bad, lousy, disappointing, horrific, scary? It doesn't really matter. It's like, what can I get from this? You know, because I want my life to be better. I want my life to be better. I can't. I want to be okay for other people, but I'm not responsible for them. I'm responsible for me and where I go and how I feel. And so, like you say, on the happiness scale, I'm at the top, man. And it's getting better.
All right, so I'm going to ask you one closing question here. On the day you take the checkered flag of life, how do you want to be remembered? What would you want people to say about you?
I'm going to be very sarcastic here.
How unlike you?
I don't care what they say. I don't, and this is consistent with me all my life. I do not care about acceptance and notoriety and congratulations. I don't care.
Okay, so and that's a great answer. Then let me rephrase that. What will you have wanted achieved in the simplest way to phrase it? What will you want to have done to please yourself before you take the checkered flag?
That no one can remember me in a negative way. That either they can't remember me or what they remember is nice. That's all.
That's nice. That's really nice.
That's it. That's all I want.
My godmother passed away last year, and she wrote out a will. She got one of those little kits for wills, and she didn't have really anything when she died. But they asked the question, "How do you want to be remembered?" And she wrote that I was a nice person. Yeah, isn't it nice?
Yeah,
that's nice and simple.
That's all I want to be. I don't want to save the world. I can't. And if I tried, I'd be disappointed and unhappy.
But we're doing that, both of us, in micro doses, though. Yeah, there's a kindness to people. And
I like micro doses.
Yeah.
I think
the ping pong, good Lord, the ping pong room is awesome.
I love the ping pong. And one of the things I try to say there all the time is, don't take this thing so seriously. Every time we play, we do something fabulous and stupid.
Yeah.
It's all about having fun, talking to each other and laughing.
Yeah.
And we're moving around at the speed and the level that we can.
Nice. All right, dear friend, we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, we did.
You satisfied we got it all out today?
I said everything I wanted to say.
Awesome.
Yeah. I don't know how this is going to come out, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, Jimmy Deans, I got to tell you, I'm very grateful to have met you. We hit it off right away.
Yes, we did.
You said to me, and I'm in agreement, we go pretty deep with stuff, and you can't talk to everybody about these things. So we go in there to play ping pong. We wind up talking the whole time, not even serving the ball to each other.
I know it.
It's funny.
But I noticed you almost from day one. As a person that could talk, that was reflective. Hey, it's rare. It's not common at all. Maybe you know a lot of people like that. I don't.
No, I don't either. But lucky I have a few of them around me. You being one of them. So.
Yeah, and you and I am, even the people close to me that I care about. They don't like to talk like this.
Yeah,
they don't want to talk like this.
Yeah, they're not kooks like we are. So.
No, we're odd. My wife, she used to call it, when I would want to try to raise it, she called it out in space crazy talk. That's how was her beloved way, and Pat calls it word salad. And they don't want this. They can't live in this space and talk about this stuff. That's not how they are.
You know what Valerie says to me?
What?
You're a lot. You're a lot.
A handful.
Oh, God. Yeah. All right, dear friend. Well, we're going to have a lot more conversations. Sure. I'm grateful that life brought us together, Jimmy Deans, and thank you for sharing your story. We covered a lot of ground today. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on the Warrior Podcast. Remember, there's a warrior inside us all. Thank you again, my brother.
Thank you.